fucking steering off the road.
So
every time Andy spoke, I jumped out the window.
Yeah,
I do that anyway.
Right. Guys, I'm really sorry about last week's audio quality. This is something that we have hopefully fixed for this session.
Third time's a charm.
Third time's a charm. Right. Hey guys, and welcome to the Raw Barbell Club podcast. I am one of your hosts, Andy. We also have Luke. I have not got used to not just jumping straight into my old intro.
She's just talking about yourself. You're just like, I have to talk about other people. I don't know about this.
He's like, hi,
Ash with his
welcome to the Raw
cup.
Barbell Club podcast. I'm your host, coach, and all-around good guy, Andy. And then there's also Luke and Ash. Thank you for tuning in.
The end.
That's all that's necessary.
All right.
We're not starting again. This is all part of the podcast.
All right, this is crash.
Perfect.
Luke, you want to introduce our guest for those that did not tune into episode 1 of Raw 2.0?
Yeah, back for part 2 with Jordan Biggie Steffens, all the way from Adelaide. One of Australia's greatest ever multi-sport athletes, strongman, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, wrestling, super total, you name it, Biggie's done it. So it's great to have him part 2. Circus strongman, Highland Games. Rugby, he's done it all.
He's done too much. Put him in a box and send him back. Thank you very much for having me back on again. That last podcast was an absolute ball. 2 hours. I couldn't believe I looked at my clock after and I was like, it's almost midday. It was unreal. I had an absolute ball with you three. And when you said we'd like to do it all over again, and we've done it after the Olympic weightlifting has finished last night, I think everyone's still on a bit of a high from that, I'm sure. So Thanks for having me back. It's an absolute pleasure.
Good to have you back, brother. It was, I mean, we covered a lot of ground last week, but there was so much left unsaid. And like you said, the Olympics are sort of starting to wind down a little bit now. And certainly the weightlifting, that thing we actually give a shit about, is winding down. So, let's talk about it.
Mate, I don't know about you guys, but I was just about to say, Andy, before I just so rudely cut you off then, I'm assuming you guys all sat down and watched the super heavyweights last night and watched Lasha do exactly what we kind of all expected him to do.
Yeah. Chip the records.
Andy wanted
3 world records.
But you know,
it was what we expected, but it wasn't what we wanted. But it was what we deserved. We do not deserve to see him do.
We're trash. We don't deserve Lasha.
Yeah, we don't deserve to see the majesty of a 500 total.
Oh God, please, God.
Hey, interestingly, like speaking of God, did you see how devout Lasha is? Did you see that image this morning that Cam put up?
Yeah.
It's like
that's ridiculous.
100 pictures of saints he's brought all the way from Georgia.
And like whatever works.
Mate,
keep bringing them. Bring more.
I need to get religious or find God or something, because that dude's...
I've been trying to use the...
I've been trying to use
the rest of us have pictures of Lasha.
And it's just basically God.
Yeah.
Like the Hail Marys, like Cam said, that's the drinking game. When he does 35 Hail Marys before a lift, it's like, damn, bro, be blind by the second warm-up.
The blood of Christ. Just keep drinking it the whole time before he gets on the platform. But it's just unbelievable. It was funny. I was saying to Andy before, I took a lot of my young guys down to watch it last night. A lot of the guys who do weightlifting, but they sort of, how do I put it? They're just newish to the sport, or a few of them aren't. I
was kind of jealous of that once I found out you were down at Wing It. I'm like, you bastard.
Yeah, sorry, man. So bad, because I know you know. I know when you were there, the wings are good, man. The wings are good.
The venue's good. The atmosphere's good. It's for Ash and Andy, it's a sports bar, like a specialist sports bar, like the kind you find in America quite commonly, but it's underground. So you go
like
down.
TGIF?
I guess so. I don't even know what that is. But you go downstairs and underneath, and it's fucking awesome. So yeah, it's a really cool place.
Just wings and sports. Sounds all right.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, man. Olympics on every channel, and we put the Olympic weightlifting on and watched the supers there. And it was really cool to see a lot of the young guys and girls, you know, some who are really like, I mean, I've got a young Iranian kid I coach who is devout weightlifting nut. Like his partner's like, he took all my plants out of my room. He took a TV, put it on the side of the bed. and would watch weightlifting till like 11 o'clock at night.
So you do.
And I'm
watch
like,
tape.
yeah, man. I'm like, you are keen as mustard. Like, poor girls got all their plants outside now because of that. And then, it was really good to have guys like him who would devote to just watching it. And then you've got newbies who sit there and go, what's this? What's that? What's the standard? Blah, 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 blah.
Good education for him, brother, in real time, right?
Oh, mate, as soon as, because they ask you, they're like, what do you think he's going to attempt? And I said, look, as I said to you guys last week, I said, he won't go 500. He just doesn't need it. I said, his coaches, because they are so good, like George's coach is just, I marvel at his coaching. He is just unbelievable, especially as a competition coach, because he just looks like he knows Lasha so well, inside, outside, the right things to say, the right attempts, the right jumps. His consistency.
It'd be so easy to just go, you know what, this guy could probably snatch 235 and fucking clean and jerk 280. Let's just go crazy, and then watch him bomb the fucking gold medal. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be so tempting if you're an inexperienced coach, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's just got he's got an arsenal of an athlete that he could use. And you watch Lasha's openers, he's 208 and he's 245, because the guys are like, oh, they didn't look that good. And I said to him, you've got to understand how scarily light those type of weights actually are for him. He almost has to slow those lifts down to get them right, because as soon as he hit those two, they got better. 215 was better than 208. 223 was almost better than 215.
Definitely
265, but better again than 245.
Yeah.
It definitely seemed like he because he's always following himself, those lifts are like warm-up lifts that he also puts less into. So you can see like he puts less into the clean. It doesn't get as high. It's a bit like, it genuinely looks worse, but it looks like he's putting less into it, which makes sense because he has to go for a world record in 3 minutes. So it makes sense that he's not going, like, putting everything he can into a snatch, because how much effort is a full effort snatch and then doing that again in a minute 30.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point you make there, Ash, that a lot of casual observers may not realize is Lasha always has to follow himself, because all of his lifts, openers, are always above everyone else. So for anyone watching at home that isn't quite versed in weightlifting, the weights go up in ascending order. So if you don't have anybody who's going to lift anything in between the numbers you're nominated as attempts, you are literally the next person to go, because it doesn't matter who the person is. It goes in ascending weight order, not person order. So because Lasha starts after everyone else has packed up and gone home, because he's that far ahead of everyone, like he literally opened his snatches 8 kilos above, the next highest snatch, which was a third attempt, and he probably could have opened at 220. So he has 1 to 2 minutes between attempts before he has to go again. So like his level of conditioning is phenomenal as well, to be able to do that kind of lifting one after the other.
Makes sense why he does the bigger jumps, and it probably, going back to his coach, they knew that was going to happen. So they knew that putting less effort into it for smaller openers and then taking bigger jumps makes more sense if you're following yourself and you're going for they knew they were going to chip the world record.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. So it's awesome to see that they're like, hey, they had already figured out 208, 8 kilo jump, 8 kilo jump again. That will put us exactly
Actually,
in the
that was
position.
weird that he went 7 and then 8.
Yeah, I thought that was weird as well, but that could just be they figured it out in training.
I guarantee he would have done 215 and it was that easy. They would have put down 220. They would have sat there going, what do you want to do? Do you feel good enough? Then they would have gone up, and then they would have gone 223. You can just see, again, this just goes back to how good a coach Azanides really is, and as well as how well he times Lasha. He, as you guys are saying, he literally has 2 minutes. They would obviously do as Andy and you guys understand as coaches, you do the little increases, which means the loaders have to come on, change weights, come back off, because you've got 2 changes
at that time. Yep.
That's right.
So you have a declaration and 2 changes.
Right. So, then they get the opportunity to change weights, etc., etc. So they will have built up slowly like that and given him the time. It played in Sydney. His opener was to win. His second was to draw just so much distance between himself and places behind. And then to go for a world record on his last attempt was just phenomenal. But again, it really just atones to exactly the level of skill. And the jumps for him, think about it like this, as I was saying to the young kids last night, they're like, he is huge. And Lasha looked the biggest I've ever seen him. Like he looked
massive. Hey.
Massive.
The shots of him from behind, he was like barely getting down that hallway. He's so massive.
Yeah, and a jump for him, a 10K jump for Lasha versus a 10K jump for, say, Andy, the percentage is so much less to his body weight.
Yeah.
So it's always been like that. You watch Razazadeh when he was competing back in the day. I thought something similar because he was sort of similar to the clean and jerk point where he used to go 250 on his opener and then he used to jump to like 262 on his clean and jerk for a second attempt, get or miss, and then he'd either get it and then he'd call it or he'd miss and then go again. So these guys would take their opening attempt, the Supers would take their opener, 250, 245, Lasha, plain and simple, 245, 255, 265. 10K jumps, nice and easy. It gives the opportunity for George to do weird changes with the weights with those jumps too. He can go 250, 255, which is the reds and yellow. And then to go up again to the next one, they have to chuck a blue plate on. So it's going to take longer to take the plates on and off.
I did notice that they made those jumps in between. I was just like, oh, they're doing massive plate swaps. And I'm like, that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
So clever
just to draw time out. That's just such a smart thing to do.
Because they're not just pumping a couple of micros on the end, right outside the collars. They're actually got to change.
Yeah.
Well, after watching the disaster that was Martirosian's coaching team not knowing how to minute someone properly, seeing someone with a proper mastery of, staying really calm, like there was no running towards the technical official table. They just kind of wandered over.
They just knew what they were doing.
They knew exactly what they were doing. And it was really cool to watch.
I appreciate how many kisses on the head Lasha gets between attempts. That's like one of the highlights for me is like how often they would just towel him down, kiss on the head, rub him down. It's just like, it's funny in a way, but it's also like, I like that they know each other so intimately. Like, this is how we get the best result out of him. We just do everything
genuine
for him.
affection though, right?
Yes, exactly. It's just like
very European thing to do. And it's you watch Lasha on his last 265. It wasn't the coaches that went to him. He stopped in the hallway, turned around to his coaches, hugged, kiss. He went out of his way to do it. And I feel like that's just such an expression of an athlete to a coach, not a coach to an athlete, because those guys would work together every day.
Yeah.
Every day. They'd be literally with each other doing this every day. And the emotion for something like that, it would be just mind-blowing.
It's something Andy and I spoke about the other day. I'm not going to go on about what we said, but the coach-athlete relationship is a completely unique one at any level. And it's not, like I said to Andy, it's not the same as a brother-sister, brother-brother relationship. It's not siblings. It's not a parent-child relationship. It's not a friend relationship. It's a completely unique one. And to see it at that level, it's the extreme end of what that coach-athlete relationship is, and it's probably tighter than any bond he actually has in his life because they live and breathe their existence together and really have so much skin in the game together. It's a genuine team effort in an individual sport.
Yeah,
one needs the other.
Yeah,
massively. They need each other.
Symbiotic relationship, right?
Yeah, I think it's something to be said about like. You say like Georgie and Lasha, like they train with each other. They probably live together pretty much.
Yeah.
They do everything together, right? And you can see that bond, and you can see how that affects his performance positively, right?
Absolutely.
But also what you can see is that international coaches, and you can see the disparity between like when they don't really have a connect, like they would have their regular coach and then they have their team international coach.
Yeah,
and you can see that,
i.e. the Australian team.
Yeah, well, most teams 100%. Actually.
Yeah,
but
right.
100%.
They don't have that connection. Yeah. And it's just like, you can see that like they do like a bit of weird jumps. There's a bit of angst.
They're effectively strangers, bro. They've probably been working together for 6 weeks. That was it.
to be
100%.
honest, they're actually competition all year round. So
Yeah, right.
as Andy would know, and Luke, and of course yourself, Ash. Luke, you've been backstage with me when we were at Nationals at under 23s when Jacko just kicked everybody
That's
competition.
always a great laugh watching the Asada guys walking around, giving me sideways glances.
You better not be competing more.
Luke was competing in the under 81s men category. But it was one of those things where at competitions all year round, you're competing against other coaches from your own country. And a lot of other coaches, especially here, or not just especially here, but even around the world, you do have a level of competition between coaches and athletes. That's just the way things work. If you look at Team New Zealand, look at David Liddy and his coach.
So tight.
He had with it. She's been his coach since like day one.
You could not pick two completely disparate size
individuals.
Body type.
It's just, but it's so lovely to watch. But the
Yeah.
New Zealand team do it quite well. Richie Patterson, who is I think he was a New Zealand head coach, was there. But each time a New Zealand athlete was competing, they had their personal coach.
Yeah.
So you'd have a head coach who looked after everything, which is great because they've got the best in mind for everybody and they don't have some sort of thought process to, everyone. They just go, okay, as a group of New Zealand, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
But as an athlete, a personal coach is going to have that personality check, that closeness with their athlete to know what happens when something goes wrong. We've all been there where there's just a shit moment and you can't get yourself out of that hole, but your coach can get you out of it, or they just know the right thing to say or the right weight to put on the bar because they see it, they know it, they see you every day, they know what
or to kiss you on the forehead. I'm adopting that strategy from now on, Andy, by the way.
100%.
I'm fine with it. I think it's like there's an argument obviously against having your personal coach there with if you have a system that has developed an athlete. But for the sake of Australia, where we don't have systems that are developing athletes, it is grassroots individual coaches developing athletes.
Yeah.
Why would you not want the best out of the athlete?
Right.
So why would you put a roadblock in the way of having that situation? And we've seen it. Look at the USA has 2 Olympic medals now.
Yeah.
And they have Pyrrhus Demos sitting there as he's the head coach, but he barely interacts. They have their coach that's doing that, and he's like almost a supervisor, making sure the US team's getting served.
Overseeing being served, challenges, things like that. So he can do it with a clear head, right?
Yeah, they have Mike Catone and Pyrrhus overseeing, and they have the personal coach there looking after the athlete's individual needs.
And like you said, look at it. America is suddenly taking medals in a sport where they never fucking take medals.
Yeah, not since the 60s, man. And Europe's been doing that forever.
Yep.
And they had close calls as well, right? Even Harrison,
he was up there.
He came 4th.
Yeah,
right?
dude.
Very close.
Right? Yeah.
CJ, unfortunately, and you know what? This is also another example. You can't prove it's very intangible. You can't prove or disprove that this is going to help because you have obviously CJ didn't do as well. You had Kate and I do really well with her coach there, but then you had Jordan who has the same coach and she didn't do as well. But at the same time, in Australia, we had, Erica that didn't do maybe as well as she thought she should have. I thought she did really well. But her personal coach was right. Angela Wydell is her personal coach.
Yep.
But then you just put it like this, though. How much worse could it have been if she wasn't there? Was Ange able to pull her out of a bit of a rut to get her back where she needed to be? It's as we say, as you just said, Andy, it's impossible to tell exactly which way or another. But if you're smart enough, which we can see it as 4 athletes, we know it. We can see it. We've been coaches. We've been athletes. We do understand. It's the guys at the top who maybe haven't been athletes that don't necessarily understand that bond between the two, who come from an outside, maybe more marketing side of life.
More of a management background versus a coach athlete background, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what you need to perceive the coaching to be at an Olympics. You have the personal side and the business side. Piros using the American
I was going to say
term,
Piros Dimos.
the business side, and then you've got the personal coach for the personal side. And I feel like over the next, few years, you'll see it more and more adopting that European style coaching, and it'll be, hopefully for us, we take that next step and do that as well, because I feel like the talent level is starting to get better here and building up better, but it's still a long way to go.
Is this the forgive my ignorance, but how's our level of representation been at weightlifting in the last few Olympics? It seems like we have reasonable representation this year. We've had somebody in nearly all of the classes, and whether it's A or B, irrespective, it's we're still there, right?
Yeah, it's a hard one because the standard here is a lot lower, and there's obvious reasons why the standard here is lower. So it's one of those things where I believe with the new way, the Roby point system that's brought us in, we have had a better opportunity to show better athletes this time. I feel like the standard is, we're always going to be a B division country, I feel, for now. Yep. But, all it takes is a few of these guys to do what they've done this Olympics for people to get that drive and that want to do more. And then hopefully the biggest key is financial support for the guys and girls so they can train more, so they can work more, so they can do more again. Yeah. I believe Erica is such a great example of someone of longevity. She was around before I started, and she's still going now. She's had time off and come back and forth. Kiana is someone of huge talent, a world junior medalist, just unbelievable lifter. Then you go up into Brendan Wakeland from Queensland. He is just a lovely guy with a shit ton of talent. Lightweight dude, 70-odd K, clean jerks, that 165, 170 mark. So 100K for his body weight. And then you go up to Charisma and Matthew Lindemann, who did. Matthew had a bit of a rough day out. I know their group was quite small, so he had to do all his lifts and then 15 minutes of warm up again. So he had a very short turnaround. And Charisma did well, but she
has a knee injury as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I heard she had some issues with her knee. So, all things being the way they are, I feel like we've represented well, but I believe our level is down from past years.
Okay,
because we had Damon Kelly, who was your sort of top 10 in the supers for many years, and then you had someone like Sean Lee or Tia, who was our last few Olympic representatives. And Sean Lee was great. She was very, very good. She was a mid B level lifter, and Tia was sort of the same thing. Damo was sort of our big deal for the last 10 years or so.
I think it's important. Sorry, Luke.
No, just go on, Andy. Yeah, go for it.
I think it's important to note, like, the two that you mentioned as having like the highest level of longevity and even like some really good results were Erica and Damon Kelly, who were found as children, compared to like a Brendan Wakeling who found the sport as an adult. And what that leads me to think about is potentially, so like the issue right now is that we get funding depending on medal placing, right? As a AWF. And for us to grow, we need more funding, which means that we need more medals now, which is hard because that means that we're not actually developing young athletes. We're trying to either push athletes that are, imports. So like people like Eileen, unfortunately, she didn't get to go to the Olympics this time, but she will be great for our sport in Australia because she's going to be bringing the AWF more funding.
Is she the one that Luke Borragini was raving on about the other day?
Yeah, so she is one of the coffers lifters.
Yep.
She's from Fiji, just like Charisma was. And unfortunately, she missed out on qualification because she missed a couple of events that were important to gain Roby points in during the Fiji.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think she actually satisfies the requirements of citizenship or whatever it is yet either.
I believe she's a citizen now.
She's a citizen.
Yeah, because I think during qualifying or something like that, I had to chat to Craig Reed about it the other day, Biggie, and he was saying That there were issues there as far as her status as
the
satisfying qualification requirements.
Yeah, so that was at the start when she initially came over. She had that period of where she was from Fiji, I believe, and she didn't have the earlier period, like Andy was saying, of qualification. She became Australian citizen, but it was just too late to put it all together.
Yeah.
But again, these are problems that we've had since the 80s. Like I was chatting to, again, last night, the young ones, because they were asking about almost what we're chatting about here and now. And you got to remember, in the early 90s in Australia, we bought two weightlifters. We bought Stefan Botev and Niku Vlad. Both of them, I'm pretty sure Stefan, the year before he came here, was voted weightlifter of the year. And I'm pretty sure the year before, Niku snatched 200 at 100. So you've just bought two of the best weightlifters in the world to come to Australia to lift.
Can we purchase? Is Lasha on the market? Can we purchase him?
Well, I think that would go above the salary cap for all of us.
For every sport in the country.
At that time, we just went through and bought heaps. We bought Niku, we bought Stefan, we bought Kirill Kunev, we got Sergo came shortly after.
So hang on, were these was this a result of geopolitical situation in the world? You know, like the Berlin Wall had collapsed and suddenly everyone could fucking go wherever they wanted. And they're like, fuck this, I'm going to Australia.
I think more of it came up because these guys had done everything they could possibly do in their own countries. Like they'd won every Worlds, they'd set world records in Olympics, like they'd done everything. So they came over to, here where the money was really good, the lifestyle was really good. So they had the opportunity to come over here and do that. And I remember looking as a junior, because you sort of came through that period, through the 80s and 90s, where you had all these guys from overseas. Stefan got a bronze for us in Atlanta. Then you sort of come into like when I was young, and the Australian records, I remember reading this when I was a kid because I always wanted to get my name on the records, the Australian records. And I remember looking at the open records, and you'd look at the lightweight classes and you go, oh, it's pretty good. And you'd see a David Sarkisian, who's Yurick Sarkisian's son, was like as a mid-60, high 60-year-old guy, was like 130, 160. Like, wow, that's pretty good. And then you start going down the list, and you got to the 82.5s. The record was Sergo Chikoyan with a 182 snatch and a 210 clean and jerk. And you're going, what the fuck is that? And then you go down the class to Alex Karapetian. And as a 94, he did 175, 210. Then you go down to the 105s. He did 182, 210. And then you went to the supers, and it was Chris Ray with a 182, 227. So between like high 70s to 105s, Sergo's snatch was 2 kilos below the world record at the time. He actually set the world record at the Goodwill Games and then got popped. But this is what I mean, which we've, big surprise, get popped at the Goodwill Games. Australia, that's a sign of goodwill. So it's just one of those things where we've got such a standard that we've had in the past because we bought them. And then we went through the system of, we had the Cameroonian guys after the Commonwealth Games was here. We had a few of the Cameroonian guys come here, seek asylum, citizenship. Yeah, they came here and lifted for Australia as well. That's a whole nother story in its own mind. But again, there was some policing guys like that who were medaling at Com Games and were
Francois, 145, 175. Like those are numbers that, like the only person sort of pushing those numbers right now would be like Kyle. He's our only homegrown lifter that can do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's got to start hitting them in comps. Like that's the big thing for him. He's got to start consistently hitting them in competitions.
So are we thinking Kyle's a chance for the next Olympics? Like all things going well, like is he? But like, is he a chance, or is he still going to be around? Or
in terms of performance, if he performs well and he
was he 21? 21 at the moment.
Same age
so
as Jackson and young.
If he continues to perform well, if he continues to be able to go to international competitions and fulfill all the requirements of that process, then he has more than, like he's a great entry to the top of the B level, which is like pushing into those A sessions.
Into those A ones.
Like if he is consistent and hits like the numbers Like if he has any improvement and then does those consistently, he'll be low A session, right?
Cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Those numbers are very reasonable, and there's just no doubt he's probably the talent that you look at now and go, okay, if he can just, as we all know, it's one, keep hitting them consistently, two, injury-free, three, making sure you can still hit the internationals as often as possible. You know, definitely he's an opportunity for the next
and like
Olympics.
we sort of discussed last week, and Ash really brought it up, was like, it makes it difficult when you have to go to these international meets, but one, COVID's kind of fucking that up at the moment, but the finances around being able to actually travel and to get there and be present for those when. So.
Well, also the next Olympics, weightlifting gets cut in half numbers-wise, correct? I feel like I think for Paris, we don't have as many people allowed to compete as we've had this year, I believe. So numbers will be even down again.
You mean us or weightlifting completely?
Weightlifting in general.
Mm-hmm.
What, we only have 5 medals per class instead of, like 6 medals per class instead of, 6 medals total per gender.
No.
Than...
So like numbers of athletes overall. So
so they've just cut it. Okay.
They might can the B division completely. Yeah. From that's what I gather now. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. I just
look. To be fair, the way weightlifting's going, they'd be lucky to fucking be there. Full stop.
That's a joke.
That's kind of what I think. I think that's kind of why they're doing that cull. I'm pretty sure that's because of that.
But yeah, steeplechase, keep that in there. Fucking hell. Like, come on. Like, you just have like such bullshit running events and like, I don't know, 720 swimming events, but the one where it's like actually lifting weights, which is like dope. And it's just like, fuck that one off.
They should literally do is keep shot put, weightlifting, and just bring in the rest of the extreme games things, and then fuck all the traditional shit off because it's boring.
100%. Like how many different distances do you need for swimming if someone wins multiple events?
Yeah, right.
50, 100, 200, 400, 800, 1500, and then one guy wins them all. You're like, oh yeah, sweet. Like,
and then do them all as medleys, do them all as relays, do them all as fucking.
Dude, I want you to do that one, but I want you to lay on your back this time. It's like, all right. It's just like, fuck.
Yeah.
But see, like
every
again,
swimmer listen to this podcast and never fucking listen again.
It's just it's
get off. We don't want
right? Like the swimming brings in so much money for the Olympics.
Yeah, because it's the one thing we're
weightlifting, unfortunately, doesn't.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because it's all poor countries that do weightlifting. You have bloody Uzbekistan winning, and you have like America and Australia winning the swimming. Of course, they're the people that can afford pools. What do you need for weightlifting? It's like, just pick some concrete up, you'll be sweet. Like that's why. You got equestrian in there because it has rich people.
Right there. That is seriously advice. Everyone that is listening to this podcast, take nothing else on that anyone says pre or post this. What I said there, done and dusted. That's fucking great. Love it.
On that sort of, the countries that weightlifters are from, when I was talking to Gary, one of our lifters the other day, Andy, about this, he's quite into geography and history, so we realised we're both on the same page there and clicked quite well there. What he was saying, mate, was an interesting point. He was like saying like how many good lifters come out of Central Asia these days, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, all the stands, and then the Middle East and things like that are the obvious ones, but then still out of the ex-USSR countries. And he made an interesting point was back in the day, you saw the Russians were so dominant because all of those countries were actually rolled into Russia. So imagine the standard at their domestic level competitions, just their nationals, with the amount of guys coming out of all these regions. The second the USSR busts up, you've all of a sudden got all these high performing countries because they're not all just running through this funnel into the Russian nationals, and you've only got one superstar come through. You've suddenly got a bunch of them. But could you imagine how high standard their nationals must have been back then?
So I think Geordie can speak a bit about this, but like winning the President's Cup or winning, even if you're in China, like Chinese nationals, is actually much harder than winning the world championships in some cases. Actually, most cases.
It's the same thing as USAPL for powerlifting.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, especially if you look back in the past, I do know when I was younger that all the senior guys would talk about how the Russian records were basically higher than the world records, or the USSR records were higher than the world records because
they're coming in hot.
Yeah, it's it's just one
Same
of
as the
those things
Chinese
that-
nationals. Like, come in as hot as you want, man. She's a young, power clean that 200 boy.
Yeah, 100%. These guys would just be so fucking tuned to the,
Tuned.
they'd be tuned
Brilliant.
they'd be tuned to the band. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things where they could push so hard. It was not an international meet, so the world record wouldn't count, but a national record would because the referees were national level. You know, these guys were just so much better. But talking about the breakup you had in the 80s, using USSR, for example, you had like Fizarenko, Kurlovich, Zakarovich, so many itches. You know, and then when it split, Kurlovich went to Belarus, and Chemurkin and the rest sort of stayed in Russia, and Pizarenko stayed in Russia. So you sort of had that little breakup. And then same with like Yurik Vardanyan. He was USSR, but actually born Armenian. So you had all these little breakups through there, you know, through that period of time. And yeah, you sort of spreads out a lot more. So you have those national records changing. But again, when they all change, a lot of the weight classes tend to change as well.
But it was also a diaspora of coaches and methodologies. So once it's you break up the USSR, it's not just the athletes that spread out; it's the coaches. So then you go have like, I don't know, you have Piros Demos, who was Armenian, then went to Greece, but they pretty much took the Bulgarian system and implemented it in Greece, but just had nicer weather.
Can't argue with that. No different to the Iranian team. The Iranian team for so many years they were okay. They weren't too bad a team. Kind of like how China was back in the sort of 90s, early 2000s. They had one or two good lifters who were that middle ground in the A division. And then I know Iran took a Bulgarian coach, and then
it shows. Where's the
Debo at?
And then their coaching started to just bank up with lifters, left, right, and centre. And a lot of them supers and heavy guys, you know.
Kebabs and Debo, what can you do?
Right.
If I have to watch another Iranian bomb out because of silly openers,
let's open above our PRs. Good idea.
Yeah,
they
do it so often.
You have 3 goes. Just use one of them sensibly.
They push so hard from the get-go. It's just risk it all. And you sit there going, you watch them hit that clean, and you're like, Jesus, the guy's fucking barely out of the
It's an
clean
opener and he's been buried.
Yeah, and you sit there just going, oh my God, if he somehow gets this. And then they miss it and then miss again. And then they go, well, we got no option. We might as well put you up to give you rest time. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You have to give him 4 hours rest for him to get that.
I understand the want to put it all on the line. Like that's what they're there for. They're not there
for the opener.
Like they're not there to you know, proverbially fuck spiders. They're there to win a gold medal, not even a silver, not even a bronze. Yeah. But like, if statistics show you anything, like this strategy
6 for 6 wins you.
This strategy only pays off like what? 0.05% of the time.
If you're TNT out, that's when it pays off. That's it.
Also, you're there for the gold, but also know your own fucking limitations. Like, you know, you're not fucking you're missing.
It's like Rustami, or personified in Rustami, isn't it?
No, Ali Hashemi is the exact same.
Yeah. But Kianish Rustami actually was hilarious with his approach to like actually trying to get medals. It's like, barely hit that 210. Better go for the world record at 232. It's like, cool, man.
It's that first one. You're just like, it was just slightly forward.
Oh yeah,
it's like she'll be fine.
I just missed. It was an RPE8. I just misgrooved it. That's it.
Yeah, it's just a misgroove. That's how you turn around and swing it to your coach off the platform. Your coach is sitting there going, "Oh man, he's missed that by a mile," and he turns around and just goes, "No. It's a little bit close and she'll be sweet."
Yeah, just got a bit behind, you know? Got a bit behind.
Or you look at the judges and you're like, what was wrong with that? And you're like, well, you didn't stand up the clean. That's what was wrong. We gave you red lights because that was pretty easy.
The Syrian coach,
take it to the jury.
Yeah, challenge.
The Syrian coaches last night, they were absolutely on the ball and missed it, massive press. And the coaches are like, death staring the judges. I'm like,
It's
wow,
just, hands in the air, go, what the fuck?
Yeah, and you sit there just go, man, like he literally did a bench press with the bar, man. He's not getting that no matter how hard you stand up the blokes, you know. But it's amazing.
Well, you know, they're probably going to go back home and be driven into a nice long drive in the desert now. So they're probably like, we need
might as well complain about
that case.
It's cool to see the way different coaches, different reactions like to certain things. David Liddy, when he missed his last lift, he just an absolutely class act, lovely guy, just absolutely class act.
Typical Islander Kiwi, brother, just chilled as shit. Like when he did his opening,
he's got that cold
and they go back in, right? He does his opening snatch, cool lift. Goes back in, the camera's on him. He's just chilling out on the lounge like he's down at the local hungy with his fucking headphones on and having a lovely time. Oh, this is the best. I loved it.
I love the chalk blow at the end where he's like, when he's finished, and he's like, blows the chalk.
He's a class act. There was one where Yuri Olzak had walked backstage and he was sitting there, and you see Dave in the background sprawled out over the couch. He's sitting there going, "Geez, is he dead?"
Somebody check his pulse, because I think he's that chilled out. He's asleep.
He's literally Colm Wolf exactly the same. Like myself and Luke, that's exactly what Colm's like.
Speaking of which, Luke,
we got Colm on next week.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it'll be a very different attitude from having myself and some of the other guys on the podcast. Whatever you do, just make sure he doesn't have any Vietnamese rolls or McDonald's with him, because no doubt he's just knocked down the local McDonald's to get that.
Yeah.
So, there could be some serious
damage. And then he'll just go into a coma through the whole podcast. He says, Colm, someone prod him. I'll message his missus. Can you go kick Colm, wake him up?
Yeah, just give him like a jab of adrenaline before he just drops up to go a little bit more pepped up. But he's very similar to David, just a very relaxed attitude. Lovely person, but just a really good way to be as a heavy lifter too. That switch on, switch off attitude where between lifts, there's not a care in the world. You can talk, you can relax, you can just do your thing and be very comfortable.
He's actually a cool guy to be around on comp day, Colm, because there's no stress or anxiety emanating from him. He's just, because you and I are pretty relaxed on comp day as well. So it's like the three of us just sit around like we're fucking just hanging, you know what I mean? Like,
I feel like he's even a step up from you and me on just
massively,
how he does it.
But very professional in the same vein. He doesn't. There's no stone unturned, but he's got it so under control. He's relaxed. It's amazing to see.
That 400 deadlift he did in New Zealand was almost the most animated I've almost ever seen him after getting a lift.
Yeah, I thought maybe Mr. Whitaker, his coach or handler on the day, might have stepped on his testicle or something just to fire him up enough to fucking go do the lift.
His handler. Pitching him on cage before he goes out. That's absolutely hilarious.
Luring out with a jar of honey.
It's just one of those really cool things where you can see the difference between the coaching styles, the athlete style as well, how people walk on and off a platform, how they even react to judges giving no lifts. Like, there's so many rookie mistakes, guys. The worst thing people can do is think that they've missed. I don't understand.
Show that you've missed.
Oh, don't show you missed. Think you've got it.
Yeah, even when you're like the Czech Republic guy and you do a backflip on your fucking clean, just stand up and go, yeah, great lift.
And that was incredible in its own right. That backed him out something fierce. Poor bloke.
Holy shit, man.
Poor bloke. Absolutely unreal.
He got the opener, but then got excited and just fucking dumped it. Yeah, fucking dude, you're not in the gym now, bro. Wait for it.
Totally. You should have put some straps on.
For the second? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Apparently, he manufactures thumb tape. So that's not a very good...
That's not a good advertisement.
Good advertisement to him. Speaking of which, if you want thumb tape, check out the Raw Barbell store. We do have weightlifting house thumb tape.
Grown.
Also, while you're at it, if your grip's failing, hit us up for a grip training program.
There we go. Keep it coming.
Training program? Training program, you say? We just happen to have online coaching available at
Bring it
And I'm
home.
gonna
strong,
be-
You
mate.
said.
Bring it home
I'm
strong
gonna
with
be-
t-shirts, Biggie.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm going to offer nothing on the grip strength or the tape side of things. My big fat panda hands couldn't even hold on to anything. So yeah, no, I'm not going to be doing much on that side of things.
You got like
but-
Alexiev hands, mate. They're like fucking pads.
Yeah, I know. You just slap someone and fall asleep. That's about the best I've got, man. That's about the
You got
best.
good coach slapping hands, for the back slap and for the face
Yeah.
slap and the ear tug.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't.
Ear tug
think-
and
I
kiss
don't-
the head.
Yeah,
That's-
It's a Georgian combo. It's a Georgian one.
Jordan, I hope
it's-
that's not how you kiss someone's head because I'm pretty sure you just ate
Nah.
someone.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
I just like before I left, I just want to feel that moustache tickle in the back of my ear there, bro.
Why your head is all the way down here, I have no idea. That's all I know. It's an absolute win-win for both of us.
Yeah.
But Andy, when you coach your lifters, because I'm not massive on the leg flap or trap pull or anything like that, or the ear pressing. I used to have that a little bit when I was lifting, but not too much. Do you tend to do much of that type of physical motivation before athletes go out?
It depends on the lifter.
Yep.
So I've got some lifters, and I feel like it's very instinctual. Like I've got one lifter who is like Aiden, who's like Bosnian, and I just one day found myself doing the ear tug, and I've never done it before in my life.
Kiss his head next time. Who knows?
It's like it's those Bosnian pheromones, mate. They get you every time.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I guess this is just the thing I do for this guy now.
Did it work?
Try the
I
try the
did.
5 kilo bumper back slap. See if that works for him.
I did see that. That was insane.
The weirdest part was Andy actually did the ear poke on himself, not actually on the ball.
You have to do it on the lifter. I was just like, I'm psyched
Come
up.
on, man.
Yeah, runs out to the platform. Andy, you're not lifting today.
It's working for me, goddammit. It's just
It'd be interesting to see though for like what athletes are motivated by that type of thing versus people who like the ammonia.
I
and stuff
fucking
like that.
hate ammonia and I hate a back slap. If someone back slaps me, I don't want to do the lift. I want to turn around and knock them out.
I like a back slap. I like a bit of ammonia,
been
but it
warned.
depends on the lift.
Be warned. Somebody slap him next session and film it. It'll be great.
Jeez, when he's doing his like lat release, so you can actually get overhead, just go for it. You're stuck on the bar. You're strapped in. You can't do anything.
Yeah. It's just when he gets out. That's the fucking terrible part. That'd be the worst part for you.
By that time, I'm in the car and home.
He's trying to get the roller door down. And I just go straight through it.
So you don't obviously, Andy, you don't use the ammonia. Luke obviously doesn't. Or do you like the ammonia?
I used to use ammonia a lot. Now it just depends. I actually found that I like to use ammonia throughout a comp, like on a strongman comp, but not actually right before an event. It just it actually helps ground me from my nervousness.
Okay. Yep.
So I'll just every now and then just have a tiny whiff, and that kind of just brings me back to baseline. I don't need it right before a lift to get me hyped up. I'm usually I'm always such a nervous person in competition, in strongman competitions, that I actually need to be brought down between events. In weightlifting, like a heavy clean and jerk or something, I could see ammonia helping, and I used to do that a lot, but I'd never use it for snatches.
Yeah, okay. Ash, do you use anything like that as well, pal?
Not really. I need to I just try and be calm.
Yeah, calm is good, and it's you look at even go to the women's section there, the fun of the open women and the open men's, both very similar style of competition. Just the difference between absolutely. Lasha and we just so far ahead of everybody else. Just so relaxed in their attitudes towards the top guys. It's really funny a lot of the super heavyweight guys are quite relaxed. Even Dave is as psyched up as he gets on the platform. He's still quite a relaxed character. It's really.
It was a different kind of psyched up though. It was more excited energy, not angry, ragey, powerlift energy.
Similar to Meso. It's Meso Sona, where he just gets onto the platform and he's just oh, I'm glad to be here and I'm ready to go. rather than like the whole just aggression. It was more like, exaltation, excitement, sort of thing.
You can read it too. You can read an athlete so much. The ones that are just yelling to try and get themselves where they need to be, like they're just trying so hard to like
externalize
they're trying so hard to get there and they're just not. Or the guys who are just so happy to just be a part of the whole situation.
I wonder if it's a matter of like bit of survivorship bias when it comes to these heavyweights are super relaxed because of the fatigue toll of being so amped, and because the fatigue of the lift is so much higher that like you just can't do it. Like you can't be amped for 6 lifts at lifting those sort of loads being that big. Like you can be as fucking ramped up as you want as a 66 because like you can recover, you're good to go, whatever. But like if you have that constant high at those like top tier neurological damaging like weights, you just can't do it. Like you just physically can't do the reps.
Could also be like the Lasha factor where there's no pressure to win because you know it's actually physically impossible.
Seriously, you can see that from the attempts from the other guys. The young Iranian kid, Davudi, who's very, very good talent. You could just see these guys, like their openers were just, they knew they were just so far in behind. And I actually kind of sat there just going, oh man, they just hit their openers and go, yeah, cool, I've got a silver or a bronze. You know, that's it. And then they
I guess that's just the way they treat it though.
Yeah, and it's a smart way to be done because they know the writing's on the wall. And I feel bad for Lasha actually after the comp. I don't know if you guys saw it. He's gone back into the warm-up room and you can just see he wants to be just to take
left
a deep
alone.
breath, but no one left him alone. Like you can just see people just, and that's what happens when literally
that's fame, brother.
Yeah, you are the biggest strength sports sensation on the planet. There is no one bigger name right now.
It's it's not the same comparison because obviously it's a much bigger sport. But Michael Jordan at his peak, he couldn't be anywhere alone. He would literally only be able to lock himself into his hotel room. It was the only time he got alone time ever. Because it didn't matter where he went, he was instantly recognizable. He instantly got mobbed by thousands of fans. Like he just never had a life again until after he retired. And that's fame for you, unfortunately. Greatness comes with that baggage.
Yeah, and I feel like for him, especially at a weightlifting competition, as soon as he stepped off, he would have been just, we've all been there where you do that last attempt. Okay, as easy as his 265 looks, we all know that would have been hard. And it would have been hard for him still.
Well, and it's still that big emotional dump, the whole build-up, suddenly it's over. Like,
he's walked off the platform and he's just wanted to have a minute, and you can just see he's like, just give me a minute, just let me get his knee sleeves aren't even off yet.
Yeah, people are shoving pens and paper in his face, like,
give the bloke a breather.
Which, to be fair, they were all officials, and I don't blame them for taking their opportunity to corner him and grab that because they may never get it again. But it's like, come on, guys, you know this sport better than anybody. Like, give him fucking 2 seconds.
I think one of them was drug testing, but the one behind him.
Yeah.
But the other ones were
drug testing would have been fucking quick.
Lasha would have turned
tackle him.
Give me 2 or 3 weeks and I'll piss in there for you.
Yeah, he just pisses and it goes straight through the bottom of the cup, and then you're just like, all right.
They've just never been able to actually capture a sample.
Yeah, they just get a ceramic vase or something. They're just like, I guess we'll use this. Just like pisses straight through it. I'm like, if you piss that hot, that's how you get out of it. Like that's the only way. You don't have to test clean. You just have to piss so hot that they can't actually test you.
Actually capture a sample.
Past anything they could possibly test. You know.
Yeah, just like destroy all their equipment. It's just like there's too much test in here.
Well, you look at. Did you see Fernando from Brazil put up a post the other day in regards to his getting popped? So he put up about his pituitary gland, how it has a cyst on it, and that's why his growth hormone levels are high.
Growth hormone.
Now,
Same.
I haven't heard that one in a while. I wish I had that one.
Hit me up with some of these cysts, all right?
Yeah. Just poke a few in if you could.
He's fucking like Denis Cyplenkov, the Russian arm wrestler with these acromegaly, where it's just like, yeah, I have way too much growth hormone. These hands are this fucking big and disgusting. Like, oh, yeah, it's a genetic problem. Is the reason I crush everyone to dust.
He's like Ken Griffey Jr. off The Simpsons when he drinks potion and his head turns fucking huge from drinking all that potion that Mr. Burns gives him. That'd be fucking hilarious. Maybe that's what Lasha's got. A bit of Mr. Burns' potions. But it's amazing. Like it'll be just amazing to see exactly what comes out after these Olympics too, because you've got to remember there's 4 years of drug testing to still happen. So who we see winning now could be changed in the future.
That's so bad.
And as I said to Andy before we started, we stay away from the drugs and sport thing because that was a 5-hour podcast in itself.
Well, you know what, I want to cover something off in a second and we'll just keep it short, but go on.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens the next 6 months, in the next year or two, because Paris is 3 years away, correct?
3 years,
Yeah.
So we could be having people popped around the same time as the next games are starting from here.
Ash, just go on mute when you're not talking because we can hear the background.
It's like a goddamn menagerie back there.
I think it's pretty interesting. Sorry, Luke. You go first. You did have something to say.
No, you're right. Fuck, what was it? It was so shut up. Overall, to me, it appeared the standards, obviously Lasha aside, the standard of the super heavies was way down on stuff we've witnessed in the past. What's that a symptom of? Better drug testing?
The new Roby points system.
Yep.
Fucked it, to be honest.
Because we got like literally the next closest guy behind Lasha was 23 kilos behind on snatch. Like what happened to, there was always guys doing 205, 210, 215.
Yeah,
not 215, but you take my point. Yeah. Like there's usually people over 200 snatching at least, and there's usually people up in the 240s, 250s clean and jerking. Like that isn't just one guy, you know. Like
because of certain countries only allowed to send a certain amount of people because of the Roby point system, because of the new system coming into place. Countries have got to select their best guys for medals. So in the super heavyweight class, everyone was fighting for silver and bronzes, but Matarossian in the under 109s was fighting for gold. Yeah. So he would have been an instant pick over Gore in the supers because Gore was always just going to come second.
Right.
But in saying that, then you start to lose that level of good athlete. In my opinion, the top three should have been Lasha 1, Gore 2, and Fernando had made his way through without getting popped, him. Or there was another young kid from Belarus who snatched like 205, I think, at last Worlds. They were probably your top three looking lineup. But due to the way the system's been put in place, it just drops that opportunity to have people push him. And it's like that through the super heavyweight women as well. If I had my way, Tatiana would have been there and she would have started on what we finished on. She could have been that person that pushed things to be a little bit different. Yeah. And Gore could have done the same thing with Lasha. Gore could have at least pushed him to maybe start 212 or 215 because that's what Gore might have finished on.
Which then his jumps look very different, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. He might have gone 215, 220, 225. You just don't know. So it's one of those things where, of course, the new system coming into place will change that type of, consistency. And you do lose a few, which sucks. Because everyone, I'm sure, is in agreement here that you want to see the best guys in the Olympics, right? Even if, you just want the best guys there. Even if China does have 50 people per class, that just happens to be that they're better than everybody else.
To add to that, I think it's important to show an example. Like an example is obviously China just not sending people that would win every class. Like Tian Tao wasn't there, Deng Wei wasn't there. Like these are people that are not just the best, they're actually like world record holders.
Yeah.
And they weren't sent because there's a fear that the competition would actually just be too much. I mean, like there's just a little bit too much risk involved in not getting a gold medal. And that's what these countries are doing. It's just a political game.
Can I make a point? One of the things as well, though, is the Olympics. What is the point of the Olympics? Is the Olympics the epitome of performance, or is it also the clean sport that includes all countries to get all the countries involved, because that's part of the Olympics as well. And it's part of the criteria is to get a better representation of different countries in it. So having a reduction of Chinese weightlifters is fulfilling that criteria, but not fulfilling the criteria of peak performance. And I just think because the Olympics always has this dichotomy of like, it's meant to be amateur sport, right? And that amateur sport is meant to take people that are strong and do a sport from different parts of the world and bring them together. And that's part of what the Olympics is. But
but we all know that fucking died in the arse in about the early 90s.
They're holding on to it, and that's why these rules are in place.
Unless you're boxing.
Unless you're boxing, you're still an arsehole.
Yeah, exactly.
How dare you want to be able to eat? Fuck you.
Yeah, so that's like one of the things I'm just like, maybe the Olympics, it needs to be restricted like this, but it can't be the epitome of peak performance. If that's the case, it needs to be maybe world champs or something, or one of these like President's Cup where it's just like, come in hot, let's see what you can do.
It's one of the funny things too, how athletes perceive certain things as well. So look at it like this. You look at for tennis, the highest thing in the world is Wimbledon. Ash Barty doesn't win gold at the Olympics, but she's still the best tennis player in the world because she won Wimbledon, right? Then you look at sort of the levels going into like weightlifting. So for weightlifting, you'd think most athletes would put weightlifting Olympics as the pedigree of, where you aim for. Then slightly below that, you go World Championships. Depending what country you're from, then you sort of go down to like, for the US would be like the Pan Am Games and stuff like that. Then you'd sort of probably steadily come down to sort of the Asian Championships and stuff like that. So you've got those sort of a regional area competition. Then you sort of come down a little bit lower to sort of maybe Com Games below that. And then you sort of go down to your nationals and then build down slowly like that. So, it's all about where, like you said, where you feel the perceived height of the sport is. Like, do you consider the NBA finals better than Olympic gold medal for basketball? And each sport has their own hierarchy, I guess, of competitions where do you perceive? And this Olympic Games especially has brought out a very different thought process to sports, very different in a lot of ways on how the sports are perceived. There's been a lot of changes, especially at this Olympics, not just in weightlifting, but in a lot of sports.
It's interesting what you say there about the basketball specifically, because Americans have a very good habit of like taking sports that only they have professional leagues in and then calling their championship a world championship. And yeah, fair enough. I mean, nobody's going to beat them at NFL and generally not in basketball, but their team isn't looking so hot this year in the Olympics. In Australia, I think we actually play them today and we're looking fucking great. And we actually beat them in a warm-up. In fact, Nigeria beat them in a warm-up. And you can't say they've got a shit team. I mean, perhaps they haven't put together the strongest team they could because a lot of the players just choose not to make themselves available for the Olympics. But, they're not bums. It's certainly not a shit team. And that's a symptom of the rest of the world is actually catching up and closing that gap with their own professional leagues in basketball specifically. But, I definitely don't think in the US they would regard the Olympics as the pinnacle of certain sports that they're actually good at it.
Exactly.
I also think that potentially having like the US team is just made up of like these 18 players that don't particularly work well together.
Yeah. Well, that's what they've also said, that there's been communication issues. I mean, they don't play together all the time. They've probably been training for a month, maybe. Like, yeah.
Like I would say, like the Australian team potentially have played together a fair bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Australian team is actually the same ones that just missed the bronze in Rio. So
yeah, there's a few guys.
Paddy Mills there, and
their senior squad, Delavadova and all those guys are in there. And this is a touted side, obviously missing Andrew Bogut.
I was going to say Bogut's probably the big ticket name that's not there, but yeah.
But he's older now, and Australian basketball should have been medaling the past few years in a row. We're at probably the best stage the last two Olympics and this one to medal, and we just sort of choked at the last minute. And
well, that's right. They do all right this year because they're actually, I think if they knock off the US, they're in the run for the gold. So
we should be too, because let's be honest, America could put their Z team in of players and they'd still be in the top teams anyway.
Exactly.
But it's just one of those things where the Australian team will play all the time together in season, like around the place, but the American team can chop and change so much, and depending who wants to be there. And a team full of superstars, if they don't work together, it's not just going to win. But
that's it.
America,
and like
America can flick that switch and then just cane everyone.
And it seems like the chatter I see over the last few years with basketball in the US is like there's a lot of guys on those teams just don't give a fuck about the international stuff. Whereas if you watched The Last Dance and that great basketball doco last year around the Chicago Bulls championship runs during the 90s, when they had the Dream Team, the first time in Dream Team with Barcelona in 1992, you had a team full of literally all-time greats: Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, fucking Magic Johnson, bloody, and Scottie Pippen and all these greats. And that was basically a team of individuals, but you could tell that just when they were training, when they were getting ready for it, there was a hunger and a competitiveness there, and they ended up forming a brilliant team out of that. And a lot of that comes down to who the coach is, but it just seemed they held a lot more stock back then in regards to how high they held the Olympics versus these days. Nobody seems to give a fuck, because you've seen in recent years, guys just aren't even making themselves available.
Or we had that with Australia. We had one of our best guys not want to play, and it's just one of those types of things. Is that just basketball, or is that something that's going to be heading towards the Olympics in general? Because as Andy said before, it's an amateur sport. It's not a professional sport. They don't just get paid massive money to do it. Let's put ourselves in the basketball players' shoes for 30 seconds here. If somebody said to me, "Hey, we're going to give you a contract for $100 million for 2 years to play ball, and you can't make your Australian team," there's going to be one side of me that goes, "Fuck yeah, I want to play and get a gold medal." And then there's the other side that goes to me, "Holy shit, that's me set up forever and ever and ever."
I'll buy as many gold medals as I want with my 100 million.
Basically, I'll buy a grill that says gold on the front of it, right? So.
But it's also like you're getting the chance to win a gold medal. You don't get a gold medal.
That's not guaranteed.
Exactly.
So here's a guaranteed 100 mil, or hey, here's the chance to play in an amateur league where you still might lose, and most of the time, let's just say Rio, wasn't that a shit fight the whole time? Like they went to dog shit hotels and it was a nightmare for 2 weeks.
They're giving them the full favela treatment in Brazil.
Yeah, it's pretty much just it's like what's the choice? And it's like you're a career athlete. Like this is your job. So as your job, are you going to take a volunteer role to go to a country for the chance to win a gold circle, or are you going to just make money?
And the other stuff that's associated with that is risk of injury. What's that going to do to you? 100 million if you get injured? They don't give a fuck if you went to the Olympics. They're just going to go, well, you've just broken your leg and now you can't fucking play ever again. We'll take that 100 million, thanks.
Exactly. So you risk so much here. And talking about going to shithole games, we got Brisbane in 2032. So
if the Olympics is still around by then,
let's go the standard. So best Olympics of all time. Would say Sydney would be right there, if not the best, because it was just fucking amazing. Melbourne, pretty good for considering it was 1956.
Oh, 1956, yep.
Right. And then we go Brisbane.
Yeah, bottom of the barrel. They were the only city in the world in contention. Yeah, well done, Anastasia Palaszczuk. You really won something there.
Oh God! Well, what does everyone think about Brisbane holding the next Olympics? Besides,
Well, all I think is they just want some injection of funding to update their archaic fucking infrastructure problems up there.
Yeah, that's true. But also, the infrastructure usually actually puts the city in debt. It's for tourism and some stuff, and you make money. No, almost every country every city that has hosted the Olympic Games.
It's not the city. It's Australia's going to fucking wear that. It's going to be pay for it.
100%. But the Olympics puts countries in debt. So
massively it does. Especially when it's Tokyo and the poor bastards can't get a single bum on a seat.
Ask Tokyo how the Olympics is going for tourism and stuff like that.
How's your ticket sales going?
Oh, you just feel so bad. But again, for Tokyo, it's a huge debt, but that's such a thriving country with so much, going on. Melbourne, thriving city with so much going on. Sydney, thriving city with so much going on. Melbourne and Sydney are the two
Brisbane.
biggest hubs in
And
Australia.
Brisbane, the old brown snake. Fuck yeah.
Backwater,
You know,
backwater that goes under if someone pisses in the river in fucking Ipswich.
Right. It'd be seriously, because I remember if somebody said, let's do an Olympics in Adelaide, I'd turn around and just piss myself because we just don't have the infrastructure. Hey, look, I'd love to run.
Dude, I fucking love Adelaide. I'll come down there and run the Olympics.
But it's just not it's like a population of 1 million people. It just doesn't have the infrastructure. It's not a bigger place. I don't even think we'd be big enough to hold a Com Games. You know,
just think about it, brother. Luke Reynolds, IOC president. You know it sounds good.
You would be the most corrupt person. That's why you're already set up because you're just the Thomas Ian. Like I can't wait for the doco series 15 years from now of you just embezzling cash for the last fucking 10 years.
I'll have two PO boxes, one for bribes and one for mail.
It would
be like the Fire Festival where like nothing actually happens.
Just do yourself a favour, Luke, and try and get as many of these things as humanly possible.
I'm gonna go get 6 fucking Nokia 3210s and fucking that's my networking.
It'll just be again. I hope Brisbane do a great job. Don't get me wrong. As much as I take the piss, it's great that Australia has another Olympics. But it's just going to be a very interesting because Paris is the next one, and that'll be huge as well because.
That'll be interesting, actually.
Yeah, it'll hopefully be
because they've got a lot of well, that's going to be interesting because they've got a lot of domestic issues as well in Paris. So it's going to be interesting to see how they pull this one off.
Absolutely, coming out of COVID too. Hopefully, we're out of that sort of issue by then, but no one knows what's. Yeah, hopefully you guys are out of it sooner rather than later as well. But
I don't think Sydney will be out of it. Paris might be.
Australia will be the only country still left in it by the sounds of things.
Yeah,
but,
fuck.
Yeah.
Shall we do the gigantic elephant in the room?
I have one thing to add first.
Fine,
before we do that.
Speak up.
I think
fall behind,
like,
you get left behind.
Jordy, you brought up a pretty cool point before about like athletes and what it actually means to be an Olympian. And I think as it turns into more of just like, hey, this is a feather in my cap, as other competitions come up that we can place more import on, the Olympics will fall to the wayside for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's the money isn't there, and let's be honest, money rules everything around me. It's the truth. And as much as we don't want to believe it's the truth, it is. It is life. That is the way it is. For me personally, being a weightlifter and a strongman, if I was to toss up between the two, and I, as a young kid, aspired to be an Olympian. I wanted to compete for my country after watching Sydney. I wanted to make Com Games. I did everything I could to try and make Com Games. I moved to Brisbane and was trained under Miles Waddell for a while until I got injured. And then obviously had to withdraw from that. But do I turn around and go, did I lose everything because I didn't? And I, personally, myself and I guess Australian weightlifting, we probably saw a little bit different on a few things because I had the opportunity to go into a professional sport like strongman, but also an amateur sport like weightlifting. And I saw the strongman being the world of almost I control everything I do because it's what I do and it's my life and it's my sport versus weightlifting, which is very controlled by a whole lot of other people and probably a whole lot of people I didn't necessarily agree with. Some of those things on my behalf, I was probably young, pig-headed and whatever, but I still know on their behalf as well, a whole lot of their tactics and the way they were doing things weren't necessarily for my benefit. It was for theirs and theirs only. So that was, I guess, the biggest thing too with a lot of athletes coming through with so much more opportunities. Will we see more guys go for pro stuff because the money is better? Like we were talking about last time, in the future, could you see Lasha retire from weightlifting and go into strongman? Could you see something like that? The money is,
Georgia's no stranger to strongman. I mean, they've got Janashia at the moment, who's always top 5 or top 6 at World's Strongest Man. The dude's an animal.
And they know each other too.
Yeah, the Georgian Bull and their friends. So it's not a leap to think that Lasha may go across there and go, fuck it, there may be some more money to be made here. Not that strongman's, some fucking bottomless pit of money, but it is a professional opportunity where he could,
Yeah, his money
makes more
won't be
coin
made.
there.
Yeah, his money won't be made in competition. His money will be made in sponsors
Yeah,
and finance like that. You know, and that's where
we saw that with Misha Koklayev, with the Russians. He tried to make that sort of transition back and compete for Belarus, which ultimately was unsuccessful. But with the weightlifting, but yeah, it's he definitely would have made more money from the strongman side and gained more fame, I'd say, outside of Russia, for the strongman side rather than the weightlifting side.
So, in answer to that, Andy, does Olympics then become that stepping stone rather than the actual peak? Is that the stepping stone to becoming better? So, using Lasha for the example, because we've talked about him the whole time, he sort of takes the opportunity, he wins gold, he sets all these world records, gets paid, goes, cool, done and dusted. I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, probably still got a few years left in me. What do I do? Do I go to Strongman 2 and heaps of money there? Do you go to, for the sake of saying, do you go to pro wrestling and do you go there and do you make heaps of money like Adam Scherr did from Strongman?
Well, exactly. We see people go from strongman into other things as well because there's fuck all money in strongman. So Adam Scherr, Mark Henry, all these guys, Nathan Jones, they all transitioned out of strongman and across into
or movies.
Yeah, well, exactly, into other sports like wrestling and thing. Entertainment, exactly.
Money.
Because they're fucking millionaires now and we're not.
I think a good example might be wrestling in the Olympics. So they go from wrestling to MMA. So that's where the money is.
Yeah.
You get these athletes wrestling for the Olympics and they take that as a stepping stone. So it might be good because then it's still useful as an amateur league. So you have a filtering process to create athletes as amateurs, but there's inherently no money in it. So it evens the playing field. So
it really highlights that Olympics is amateur. A lot of people think it's professional. So it's not, you know.
It makes sense if you are a Mike Tyson and you compete in the first Olympics at 19 and then you become a god afterwards. Yeah. Like that is a filtering process for talent as well. Yeah. So you can have these sports as ways of creating good athletes for future development rather than just like, oh, this is the pinnacle. It can't be an amateur event and the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Well, CrossFit's done that a bit for weightlifting too. Like, look at half of our good weightlifters coming through, especially our female division, half of them are CrossFitters anyway, that weren't necessarily the fitnessy side of the sport. So they went into this. And then take it, for example, Tia and James. They'll now move into CrossFit into Olympics. So it's so it's so cross-working with each other. But again, it's going to be exactly where that money falls, you know.
In all honesty, that's a good point, but you could go the other way. So you have weightlifting and gymnastics as the filtering process to the Olympics, and then you go into CrossFit from there because there's actual money in CrossFit.
Absolutely.
I think it goes to show that the Olympics have and they should take our advice definitely, but the Olympics have some issues with what their mission is. Like you can't say that you're the peak of performance and then not pay people to perform. You have to incentivize these athletes, and eventually, you can't ask for the countries to incentivize the athletes to come perform, which they all do. And then 2, you're going to get to a stage where the incentives outside of the sports are more appetizing to these athletes rather than
let's be honest,
them actually coming to the
athletes have a shelf life, and it's a very fucking short one generally, especially at professional levels. So it's like they're going to make money, make hay while the sun shines sort of fucking thing as it goes. And when it's 4 years between Olympics, like you've got people like, it's paid off for someone like a Hidland Diaz, but that's because it's a country that actually, rewards excellence in sport. But for most Western countries, right, it's you spend 10 years trying to get to 2 or 3 Olympics. You're going to come out of that with fucking chicken feed, you know what I mean? Versus 10 years in a professional league. Jesus Christ, you'd be fucking loaded.
Yeah, but especially was such an outrageous result for her. That was the first gold medal for the country.
Well, it took her 16 years as well, right?
Exactly. So, what did she get? About a bit over $500,000 US and a house.
800 US and 2 houses. So not a bad payday.
There you go. So she got a reasonable payday, but that's one.
Yeah.
One out of.
And let's see how that changes as well. Let's say Hidland Diaz, now is popular enough that she's going to come back and go for another one. Is she going to get the exact same thing, or is Philippines going to, reassess, what their incentives are.
Yeah, they've just spent the whole Filipino GDP on that one reward package. So it's like, we can't replicate that 4 years later.
Yeah, and what's the ROI? Like,
yeah, right.
Is
Is
this
this suddenly some influx of all these brilliant athletes into the sport, or definitely very little return on investment? I think
that's like me going, like with our current Raw membership, being like, hey, if you beat Luke's log record, I'm gonna give you $1,000. You have you have 4 weeks to do it. You know, like how many of our members are gonna actually be able to do that? And then like by some miracle, like Glenn does it, I'm like, oh fuck, I wasn't expecting to pay this out. Now I've got to do it.
Just sank the gym. Good one, Andy.
Yeah.
And you sort of go to Europe and over through there, you see, you know, depending who the massive sponsor is. I know in Russia, when you win medals over there, you get given cars, because I'm pretty sure Mercedes or BM was one of their main sponsors of their teams. So I believe
Tatiana got a house as well.
Yeah. So you sort of get these things where, you know, the country will splurge out on those types of things, but they're very consistent, you know, and it's usually a sponsor that gives it. So Mercedes gives them a brand new, I think Lasha's got a brand new G-Wagon or something like that. I'm pretty sure he got that at the last Olympics. You see people like Blockov, and you see guys like that who have, you know, from World Championships, they sort of have one car from that, which is, trust me, if somebody turned around and said, hey, Jordan, we're going to give you a new S-Class or a new 7 Series, you know, whenever you're ready, Chief.
Well, we're talking about a $250,000 vehicle here. We're not talking about a fucking Corolla.
100%.
I'd be happy with a Corolla, though.
I'd be happy with a Corolla. That's fine. Like,
I'll be happy with some fucking wheel nuts from Strongman.
So it's that consistency and finding. But Europe's been doing that for years. They've been handing out those type of, you know, stuff to their athletes for years. So they've got it down pat what they need to do. It's going to be interesting to see what the other countries do.
But they can give out that sort of stuff because people give a fuck about weightlifting there.
Correct.
It's a national sport. It's what they live, breathe, and die for.
Yeah, like you're not going to get athletes to win when you have contracts for NRL for 500k for that many people.
100%.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
I think it's probably cool to see a couple of these countries like the Philippines actually win medals. Like obviously Ecuador also had their first 2 ever weightlifting medals. With those 2 girls.
Speaking of countries that are going to get popped,
Italy.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, Italy got 3, right? 3 medals.
Yeah,
close to a gold as well.
Yeah,
they're 100 males. So like they've come out of the woodworks. I like to see this diversity of countries with like the top levels of performance. That's dope. Like I want to see that, and I'm just like, whew. It just looks like they've just all found a way to come in hot.
Oh, yeah. Italy also got the gold in the 100 as well as the high jump as well, right?
Yeah, and they also took gold in the fucking team pursuit track cycling something or other last night. The bastards beat Denmark, which I have Danish heritage and family, so I was quite burned up about that. But I was happy to see New Zealand crash their bike and Australia take the bronze. So go fuck yourself, Kiwis.
Did anyone see Australia lose their handlebars in one of the...
Yeah, the dude like skinned his fucking face at 65 k's an hour on timber. It was not pleasant.
No.
Name and shame that shitty bike company, by the way. Fuck me.
Oh my God.
Imagine your bike falling apart. Like, that's a Mr. Bean or, you know, like...
Oh my God. I'm in possible tears. I'm just in tears right now. You guys are fucking hilarious. Poor New Zealand is just carpet fucking sweep. I'm like every day.
Trash.
Absolutely hilarious.
Mate, I get it back in fucking spades when I go there. I'm the fucking villain and I fucking cop it from their shitty crowds.
I did find it amusing watching the shot put the other night, and I was watching the opening throws, and I saw Jacko Gill throw, and I knew as soon as I put the phone up, I'm going, Luke's gonna fucking hammer shot. 20 minutes later, I fucking towered that bloke up in New Zealand.
So after, to give everyone context, I competed in Hororada at the Oceanic Heavy Events Championship, which is probably one of the better. It's probably the highest title you can win in Highland Games in the Southern Hemisphere. So back in 2016, a few weeks before Australia's Strongest Man, I went over there on a bit of a whim. Actually, I was invited and jumped in. It was a huge lineup. It had Jeremy Hogg and everyone there, Biggie, and Jacko Gill was the golden boy. He'd just come back from Rio. And obviously Jacko Gill's one of the top shot putters and a dual Olympian. Great kid. But so he competed in the heavy events, and the media were there. They were going nuts for the golden boy that's just come back from the Olympics. I flogged everyone that day. I'm not too proud to say I had the contest of a fucking lifetime. And Jacko was second behind me. And it was hilarious because I'm pretty sure the newspapers had already printed up their editions for the next day with Jacko winning, and they were so fucking disappointed. They didn't want to borrow me. They didn't want to borrow anybody. I'm like, I just crushed the New Zealand narrative. Greatest day of my life.
Greatest day of my life. Oh my god.
So every time I see poor old Jacko, he's a great kid. I was just like, fucking flog that guy. Don't worry about him.
Well, don't worry. The American came out in his first throw and flogged him as well.
Krauser, yeah. He throws bombs on his opener, beats everyone by 2 meters and just goes back to the hotel.
I don't know if I know you saw it, Luke. I don't know if Ash Randy, you guys saw his first throw. So if you watch shot, you'll see the guys that obviously they'll turn through the circle and you can just see them put all that effort in. And, you can see a lot of the guys, it wasn't everything, but you can see them just want to get it out there as far as they could just to get the qualification. And, guys were throwing the 20s on their first. And I think Walsh and someone else threw 21s on their last.
Yeah, I think so. Tom Walsh is the top Kiwi shot putter, and he's a world champion. He's never won the Olympic gold. He's always been very close.
Yeah.
But he's definitely a legitimate contender. Yeah, so he opened on like a 21.49, which auto qualified him. But yeah,
but you just watch Crozier just come out on his opener, and he just went through the circle so slowly, and then right at the last second just goes pop bang, and you're like, and you see it hit well over qualification. You go, that's got to be mid 22s, and it was mid 22s. He was 2 meters ahead of everyone.
Yeah, it was outrageous. So to give you guys a little bit of context, if we're trying to compare Ryan Krauser these days to anybody, he's the Lasha of shot putting. He's actually rewriting the record books. So for years, the record was just over 23 meters, and there was a bunch of guys. Tom Walsh was one of them. Kovacs, the other US guy, and the Hungarian guy. They're all within a couple of centimeters of it for ages. And then Jono, our friend in New Zealand, actually predicted it. Former thrower and weightlifter, strongman. He's basically New Zealand's multi-sport answer to Biggie. He goes, you know what? He goes, in a couple of weeks, Krauser will probably just come out and beat the old world record by something like 40 centimeters. And he came out and threw like 23.35 or something at one of the US league. And it was just, he just blew the record away by so far. It was stupid. So he's hitting openers at the Olympics. He's not even winding up. He's just doing a bit of a half-hearted single turn, explodes at the last second, like Biggie said, quick block, out to 22.5. Yeah, I've auto qualified, fuck everyone else and go back to the hotel while the other guys are struggling hard. The conditions are pretty tough and they're really not throwing to their potential. It's actually quite exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see the camera, you see him turn and throw and the shot comes out and all you see in the background is all these other competitors like,
they slowly, they die a little more inside each time he throws.
You can just see the whole rubberneck, like the whole and then just absolutely unbelievable to watch.
No, he's really writing the record book. So unless he breaks his leg or some shit, which I never want to see, he's taken the gold on an opener, and everyone else is fighting for the other places with daylight.
Well, the high jump kid the other night. I don't know if pole vault kid the other night from Sweden who won comfortably and went for the world records. He broke Sergei Budka's records mid last year, which had stood since '94. He's 21 years old and he's clearing. I think like everyone was bombing out at 6, and he hit his one of his early jumps at mid 6s, like 6:05 or something. And you just sit there. He's 21, world record holder already, and he went over world record and clipped the bar on the way down with his chest. Just unreal.
There's oils ain't oils, hey. Like it's like there's athletes and then there's fucking athletes. Like it's even at this standard, there's always that separation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You could see.
Well, you think about the 400 hurdles as well. Where
absolutely.
You had someone who was the world record holder break the world record, but then the second place also broke the world record, and then third place broke the Olympic record.
Is that how's the standard? That's outrageous. Is that that was the 2 American girls in the that you're referring to there?
No, it was a guy from Norway, I think.
Yeah.
And then second place was a US guy, I think.
Yep.
It's
just
How
outrageous.
devastating is that, though, to come second with a world record and then to come third with an Olympic record?
Yeah, imagine running the race of your life.
Yeah, and you're still not good enough. Go kill yourself. No, don't do that.
Ruthless as hell.
Are we going to do it?
Yeah.
It's got to be done.
So,
any later will be stupid.
Yeah, that's true. We have 20 minutes to cover this topic.
Excellent.
We're
More
so
than
going.
enough time.
Ash is like, I've got 20 hours. Settle in. I've got popcorn.
So it was pretty interesting to see the 87 plus women's class, as it was the first time in Olympic history that a transgender male to female athlete competed. We talked briefly about this the other day with Cam, but now we've actually seen it happen.
Yep.
And I think it's cool to discuss topics like this with an open mind as well as open dialogue.
Yeah, and we said we'd take on the tough subjects with this podcast this time around. So fucking let's get after it.
I think she should have got at least the second, right? Like, I don't really care about much, but like the jury thing, she should have got the second. 125, like it was a slight elbow bend. I don't think she can like bend the arm, like straighten the arm properly. So just like at least.
So to cover off the lifting first, like you're doing there, Ash.
I think she should have got the second.
Laurel actually injured an arm a couple of years ago, right? Oh no, was it a snatch? Was that the same elbow that is not fully extending now? Opposite.
I don't think so. I think it was the other one that didn't rock out.
Okay, because obviously, as we know, there's when it comes to your lockouts, if you do have issues with that, you need to obviously present evidence to the refs and the board and all the rest of that shit that you can't lock it out properly first.
Same time, it's dodgy as well when they do that, because like West Kids can't lock his arms either, and he did the elbow thing and he still missed lifts. So
West Kids looks amazing. Leave him alone. Stop muscle shaming that man.
He's huge.
We didn't see many people point at the elbows. I think the only other person was like Gail from the French athlete, right?
Yeah, the Cameroonian guy.
I'm not even going to try and pronounce the last name, but she's a phenomenal lifter.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for Laurel, she bombed out on the snatches, did not get to go into the clean and jerks. I think she was a contender for silver or bronze medal. Yeah. Like all of the girls other than Li Wenwen were pretty much there. Like they're all around the 120, 145 mark.
Yep. I was going to say, what's Laurel's clean and jerk? Like, what were we expecting there?
32.
So she was opening on 140. That was her set opener.
Okay. So 32 snatch, 50 high 50.
So definitely in the mix. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what happened was she came out. She missed the first one. Wasn't obviously like missed it behind. I think. Was that right?
Yeah, spat out the back. Yeah.
Then she came out on a second. Missed that due to press. Now, what was really interesting was the judges gave her reds. It wasn't the jury. But I thought it was funny that the New Zealand coaches
didn't
put a challenge.
No, they didn't challenge it. Yeah.
And I wonder if that was a calculated political move where they know there's already controversy around her.
That's a good point, Andy. I wondered if there was some sort of gamesmanship there, like as far as we have to be very carefully how we tread with this. I mean, there's even been suggestions online that Laurel actually bombed on purpose. I don't know if that's actually true, and might be a bit of an unfair accusation. But who really knows with that?
Contend David Leedy's when he had a press out.
They didn't. So maybe it's just like terrible coaching on the New Zealand.
Is New Zealand even aware of the challenge system? I mean,
that's the other thing as well.
In that country.
The challenge system was so redundant within this competition as well that was it even worthwhile doing? Like, I feel like no coaches knew what they were doing, because you'd have like jury overturning a lift. Then a challenge card being played, and then you just give it back to the jury, and the jury will just look at the lift again and be like, oh yeah, no, we made the right decision. Why would they change it after they've already made the decision?
The whole fucking system's redundant.
Thank you.
It
I
very
have no
much
clue
is.
why they've changed this whole system.
And you actually steal credibility from your referees entirely.
If you've got a jury there, let them overturn it when they think they need to overturn it. Don't give them a card. Don't add all this extra shit to it when they just don't need to.
Yeah.
I disagree, Jordan. I think the card system is great, but let the card system dictate whether the jury even intervene. Let the referees, the three judges that you've put on stage to make a decision. Yeah. And then if an athlete is like, hey, we want video refereeing or we want like a bit extra, then the jury steps in. None of this jury stepping in when it's a good lift, turning it to bad, or when it's a bad lift, turning it to good.
And that's fine. You've just got to change that whole system of how it works, which that what you just said, that makes perfect sense, rather than the jury just having an instant step into the situation. The card basically brings in the situation with the jury.
Exactly.
That's exactly what you say. Yeah. And that would be a good way to have the jury still involved in the situation. Absolutely.
Or just get rid of them.
I think so.
Get rid of them.
What happened with Laurel is like with her bombing out, or even with her, let's say she didn't bomb out, let's say she had a medal. Sorry, she didn't medal, but she just like did not do as well. That does a lot for, let's say, the progressiveness of letting trans women into sports, because it showed that we had three other women who have been born women actually medal above her anyway. And in fact, like every single other athlete, they're medaled above her because she bombed out.
But it's sort of a moot point, right, as well. It's actually a bit of a counterpoint, because yes, they beat her and she bombed out, but she was far from her best performance. 132 she's hit before, and she was like not on her way there. She's 44, definitely the oldest weightlifter.
Yeah, second of all time or something.
Yeah, so definitely, and still in contention. So it's like, it's sort of a moot point of having that transition, having a moderate national, like a high level national lifter plus 15 years is now in medal contention if performance.
Yeah, it's a real divisive a subject to chat about, and I'm going to be honest here, and people are going to be divisive on just four males talking about it, but as I was chatting to you guys about earlier, I guess I'll just come out and say exactly how I feel of the whole situation is, talking here as four males, I don't really come from the point of view of my thought process on the whole situation. My thought process on the whole situation is and the whole transgender thing isn't really, I think, what the issue is here, because I feel like if Laurel wants to be, lifting as a transgender lifter, that's absolutely fine. I have no dramas with that. And I'm sure 99% of people don't have a drama with that situation. It's how the IOC and World Weightlifting need to work out a way how to fit that into the system and have Laurel there competing against other transgender athletes. So it's a nice, fair system for everybody. It's not the actual idea of transgender being the problem, because that's not a problem. There's no problem with that at all. If that is your life and that's the way you want to live, I have nothing but love and respect for a person that is willing to do that, and I have no dramas with you doing that, because that's your life and that's what you want to do. But I come from the point of view of not myself, this isn't me, this is the athletes I've been working with, the female athletes I've worked with over the years, competed with, traveled with all around the world, who have missed out on medals, missed out on competitions, missed out on trophies. A good friend of mine had competed since she was 15, had a child, had come back to try and make games, and had positions taken away from it because of this. It's not up to us as males to voice our opinion and go, it's wrong because of this person being a transgender. It's got nothing to do with that at all. It's the female athletes that have to lift in those competitions that have been female since day dot. Deb Atkinson, she wrote a massive thing, and I'll send Andy, I'll send you the link. You can chuck that up and just read her thought process on the whole situation. People like us and people who just sit there and want to be couch professionals need to not just think about it on their own thought process and what they think. They need to actually go out and do research on what the other women lifters are saying and what they're doing, because they're the ones on the platform. They're the ones putting in the hours. They're the ones putting in the work, and they go their whole lives for certain situations. And again, like I said, this isn't a personal attack on anyone. This is an attack on, well, it's not even an attack on anyone.
And I don't think anyone's suggesting that, Biggie. I think you've nailed it perfectly, because that mirrors my own thing. I don't care that people want to be transgender. Go do what you want to do with your life, because I don't give a fuck what people think about what I do with my life either. So do what you want to do. But the second it starts to infringe upon other people's, opportunities and things like that, that's when it becomes an issue. And let's not sit here and pretend that even if you get your testosterone levels down to a certain level and all these other fucking arbitrary bullshit that they keep coming out with the science behind it, it's just not the same. Male to female transitions are not the same, especially somebody who was a high level lifter or a reasonable level lifter to the mid 30s before they transition. I mean, you've already had all the benefits of being a male your whole fucking life. So let's not pretend that was ever going to be fair. And now you've got Laurel's coming to the Olympics. She's bombed. And you've had a female New Zealand athlete who's trained her whole life miss out on that opportunity to compete at the Olympics. Hopefully she gets it next time, because I really feel for her, because as far as I'm concerned, that was an incorrect decision by New Zealand weightlifting. I'm gonna put it out there. I don't give a fuck about any hate that I get from this. I'm just speaking plainly and what I think is right. And then we also saw the press conference post medal ceremony this morning clip that was up online of your three female super medalists, Li Wenwen, the British lifter, and Sarah Robles from the USA. I forget the British lifter's name, forgive me. And the media, of course, tackled this question and said, what do you think? The silence was deafening. The girls were clearly uncomfortable. They didn't want a bar of it, and they didn't think it was right. And Sarah stepped up, obviously very well media trained, and she answered with no thank you. It was as plain as that. That's the athletes have spoken. Transgender belongs, as far as I'm concerned, it requires, like you said, Biggie, its own category. And perhaps it needs its own two categories where you have male to female and then female to male. Other sports are starting to move in that direction, even strongman and powerlifting. There's been big discussions around it. I think that's the way forward.
Agreed.
I'll double down. I more or less agree with parts of what both of you said, but I don't need to express my opinion on that. But I'll circle back to, what is the Olympics about? If the Olympics is about weird.
It's always a fucking fun trip having a podcast with Ash.
100%. I like it. What is the Olympics about? Is it about peak performance, or is it about inclusion? That's so. Before we'll talk about the inclusion of countries that are not necessarily going to be on the pinnacle of performance. Yep. And we're trying to, it's a platform of inclusivity of amateur athletes competing against each other on the world stage, right? Is that what the Olympics is? Or is it the peak performance? Because in this regard, it sort of can't be both.
Yeah. Well, there's a word that comes in there, Ash. Sorry to cut you off. Is fairness.
Exactly. So is it fair? But also, there's countries that run hot. That's not fair. There's countries that pay their athletes and they pave their way and they can be full-time athletes. That's not fair. So fairness is a hard distinction to make here. But inclusivity, in that regard, this is sort of a step in the right direction. But again, I don't know. I'm not in charge. I don't actually care too much about what the Olympics' clarity of principles is. Like, they can be either peak performance or inclusivity, but like, it sort of can't be both. And
I think whichever direction you looked at that, you'd find hypocrisy regardless.
100%.
I think the biggest thing is too, though, the guys at the top that do these things and make these sports and make the Olympics, the IOC committee, that's what they get paid for. That's their job. Yeah. It's their job to make this all work. That's what they get paid to make the hard decisions that we chat about and make it seem so easy.
Seems they like get paid.
Sorry?
They don't make those decisions though, because that in this regard, like, is it inclusivity or is it peak performance? Like,
they need to obviously now sit down as things change and move forward and then work out exactly the best way. This seems like a very rushed decision by everyone on all accords, you know, and all things being the way they are. Of course, the world is a funny place right now. But it's just like you were saying, it's one of those things where they just have to try and work out which way to go and how to do it. And that's something that the IOC, New Zealand Weightlifting, and everyone needs to sit down and understand. But a lot of these they seriously need to sit back and talk like we are now with the female athletes openly about these types of things. I would love for you guys as a podcast to talk to a few of the female weightlifters who have been involved with this. They can give such a more clear aspect on anything I can do. You know, I can give my thought process on speaking to female athletes, especially in those weight classes, and their thoughts and that type of stuff. This is one of those things where I feel like people need, as we talked about drugs in the last one, being open, you know, just chatting about these things, you know, not hating anybody. No one's hating on the person or anything like that. We're trying to just make it more of a comfortable thing to talk about. Like Luke said, you know, giving his total honest opinion, myself, a total honest opinion. Ash, Andy, like I said, your opinion on the whole thing.
I think it's one aspect that you glossed over was, like you said, that this could have been a rushed decision by the IOC. We're in a state where the IWF, I'm pretty sure, did not have to ratify entries because it was taken away from them, the power to choose the classes and stuff for weightlifting, and the IOC was in full charge of that. So the member federations like the AWF, New Zealand Weightlifting, whatever, submitted straight to the IOC. And like, I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that's what happens. I think they made a decision based on what would bring the most eyes. And I think in that case, they actually made the right decision. Because if their only goal is to get more eyes, create discussion, and, you know, we're talking about it. We've spent 2 podcasts talking 20 minutes about this topic.
If nothing else, it's been the most brilliant marketing ploy in the last 20 fucking years.
Let's do a
bit of virtue signaling at the Olympics and break the fucking internet.
Yeah, if you're going to bring more eyes to a sport that historically, 1, doesn't have that many eyes, and then 2, it's also like super heavyweight women, which isn't the most.
Well, there was an article the other day post this
situation.
Post this situation, there was an article came out the next day describing what happened in the crowd, which was a media scrum, obviously surrounding the Laurel Supers situation. And the second that Laurel bombed, they reckon 1/3 of the place emptied because the media were no longer interested. And that's an indictment on sort of the media's attention on only the dramatic aspect of the narrative. They didn't actually give a fuck about women's weightlifting, which is.
And can you imagine what it would have felt like as a female athlete?
Yep, watching them file out.
That would be just gut wrenching because.
Even for
you got Wee, who is literally Lasha in the female category. Like, it's just.
Yeah,
it's heart-wrenching as an athlete to sit there, and it'd be the same for all of us. If you walked out there and you had a bumper crowd for your first attempt, like bumper back-to-back cameras on you, and then you come out for your third and there's 1.
Yeah. Yep.
But even
I think Ash is bringing up a good point.
What about Laurel? Like, imagine being that person. Like, imagine being an athlete, and then you get these things thrust upon you. Like, I assume she just wants to lift. I don't know what she wants, but she wants to be an Olympic athlete as well. Why do we need the media and the IWF use it as a ploy for, like, to get eyes on the sport? Maybe it's best if we were just like, hey, like, why don't we just double down on this inclusivity thing and just be like, look, compete. We just want this to work for you. And then just like if
but Ash, to counter that, I'd love to be an Olympian. Doesn't mean I necessarily just have somebody make up a category for me or create a situation that makes that happen. If I wasn't good enough to be an Olympian, I wasn't good enough to be an Olympian. I just have to live with that for the rest of my fucking life. Like everybody fucking else who's not an Olympian. You don't just get to go, you know what if I fucking went down this route and that could get me to the fucking Olympics? Not that I'm saying that was the driving force, but to counter your argument, that's kind of what I'm coming with.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But at the same time, I'm like, people run hot going into the Olympics because they can.
Yeah, so Ash, they also have measures in place to try and stymie that. I know we all know how ineffective that is, but there are measures in place for that. It's not an open fucking gate where you can just say, fuck it, come on in and with all the drugs you like.
If the gate's open, why can't you walk in? Like, she was like, hey, can I compete as an Olympian? Yeah. And then they discussed and they said yes.
The fault does not lay with the athlete here.
that
that's what I'm saying.
circles totally back around to exactly with the IOC and everything like that, and with what
I'm
they've
saying
done.
How shit must it be for her to be
Yeah.
a third of the media leave as immediately due to her performance, just being like, fucking this.
But also, surely you had to know that would happen, right?
Yes, but it's just, I'm just putting another point
It's a
of
shit feeling, she's going to be outcasted because of that.
Yes,
and
that's
the biggest thing. I'm assuming you're saying, sorry to cut you off.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's exactly what you're saying. She's basically made herself, and weightlifting and IOC has outcasted her even more because of all of that. Which again,
they got what they need. They got what they needed out of it. They got the fucking media scrum and the fucking and the marketing out of it, and now it's done. So fuck off, Laurel, like the rest of the broken athletes.
That's the upsetting part. That's maybe what I'm saying is that's not upsetting that if a corporation made this decision for that sort of like media or like eyes, that's upsetting to use someone like that. And I'm just
well the other day, right, when Andy, was it the IWF or I think it was the IWF put up the post about the supers in the women's, and they literally led the post with a picture of Laurel. I mean, that's strategic, is it not? As if you wouldn't lead off with, say, Lee Wen, who was the fucking, the obvious goal choice. It's like it was purely a marketing ploy. And then if you looked into the questions underneath, IWF barely gets a fucking comment on any of their posts, except this time of year. Suddenly you chuck up fucking Laurel at the front. Doesn't matter that a lot of them were negative and drawing heat. It was eyes on that fucking post. It was viral, man.
Ash, what you're saying is 100% right. And it's all, to be honest, you can actually bring every little bit together. You can bring the thoughts of the female athletes who have fought their whole life to be an Olympian weightlifter. They've wanted to do it their whole life, and they have this opportunity. And then they have, a very different sort of aspect when they get to this level, and they have obviously the thought process, and with having Laurel there, so that does change a whole lot of the thing from there. But then you have Laurel coming in, who now has everyone against her. She has the world against her. She has outcasts from everybody because of it. Is that fair? Fucking oath, that's not fair. It's not fair that she's being outcast. It's not fair that that's the case. Is it fair? Is it fair for the women as well to go through what they've done? Absolutely not. It's not fair at all. So then you bring both those two arguments together and go, well, who is the leading factor behind this all not being fair? Where is the actual problem laying? Because it's not with Laurel and it's not with the women. It's with the guys who regulate it and run it all from the top, because they've won. They're gutless in one way, and two, all they give a rat's ass about is the money. They don't give a rat's ass about the athletes below them. And I feel sorry for both of them. I'm sure Laurel's a lovely person and who deserves to be a competitor at the Olympics when they set up a trans class, which I hope they do. I really hope they do, because it'll just bring a whole new level of sport together. And then you'll have your women's section, how it's been for so long, and those girls get their opportunity to shine. Yeah, and it just shits me to tears. And that's basically one of the reasons why, I sort of stepped away from Olympic weightlifting, is because the people at the top are fucking clowns.
Yeah,
I love a Biggie rant. They're the best. It always takes a while to wind Biggie up. You can fucking fart next to me and I'll wind up, but a Biggie, it takes a while. I knew we'd get there eventually, son.
Sorry.
Do you think it's worth talking about, and I know this is a slightly different topic, but there is an issue of us actually not not understand, and these are like multiple different factors, not understanding drugs properly, because a lot of research in Western countries hasn't been done because of the safety as well as the taboo of research into.
Let's pretend it doesn't exist factor.
Yeah. And then the other one is like the differential between men and women. Like we're having issues with women with high testosterone not being allowed to, like, our differentiator between a man and a woman in sport seems to just be like testosterone level, which is not the differential, right? So like, can we talk a bit about that too?
Yeah.
We're not talking.
No, it's one of those real tough things to sit down, because then you go down the aspect of physical, as Luke was saying before, when when he first came out and said exactly his thoughts on the whole thing, being born a male versus being born to a female, physically, emotionally, and all those different types of levels going through. It's not just a testosterone thing. It's so much more than that. And again, I feel like this is one of those types of things where if you can get a Deb Atkinson on here, again, she's going to be the perfect person to sit down and chat to about something like this. She's going to give you the thought process from a female. She's going to give you the thought process of a female growing up through strength sports, and just going from there. And then you three as males can then give your thought process on how a male would. Luke is an extreme international athlete himself. He understands exactly what it takes to get to that level. And obviously, Ash and yourself as well, being elite level athletes in your own rights. This seems to be one of those conversations. I feel like it'd be one of those things.
Not yet, Ash.
Not yet.
Soon.
In time, Ash. In time.
Soon.
Maybe one of those things where you chat with a female athlete on the way that they feel like they've been brought up. Because again, personally, I can't speak on that behalf on what it's like to grow up as a female turning into at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Deb Atkinson would be cool too because she has also held a administrative role. Like she was the president of the AWF as well once.
Do you know Deb at all, Andy? Have you got that network?
Not well. I talked to her once during the podcast and then not really after that.
Oh, but you do. Yeah, you said that. So you do have some sort of established thing there, though. So yeah, it's probably easier for you to approach her on that one than me.
I just get Jordan to approach her.
Yeah.
Recommend.
I was about to say, I think she stepped on my phone at Oceana's a few years back, so she owes me a new phone.
You have enough phones, Jordan.
Never enough phones. But no, Deb is wonderful. She's she's been around the game for so long, and she's going to be able to give her thoughts because she's competed against Laurel as well. So she's going to have such a big insight in these types of things. So I feel like that'd be just a great conversation to have with her. Again, she's just going to be able to bring that a little bit extra that, again, personally, I can't bring to that situation.
You're right. And but to circle back to what Andy was sort of asking about, like, is testosterone literally the only defining difference between males and females? It's clearly not, because there's just genetic and biological differences. I mean, I can't believe it's even a fucking argument. And like, if you want to look, I don't even know if I mentioned this the other day. I've certainly had that discussion with someone in the last few days, but use the CrossFit Games as an example. Tia's one of the greatest athletes of all time, bar none in any sport. She's excellent, and she's so dominant now. She's the GOAT of CrossFit, especially in the females. But the times, weights, and everything else are still so far behind what the men are doing. There's just a difference there, and it doesn't mean they're lesser athletes. It's just a genetic difference there. So, and you see it in any sport, the times are reduced on the women's side. It doesn't make them lesser athletes. It's just a fact. It's like,
and we talked about the relays already, right? Like,
yeah, right.
The mixed relays.
Exactly, with Cam. Mixed relays, and you had the female runner last, and she got run down by every single male in the race when she had an 80-meter head start. I mean, and it's no disrespect to them. There's just a difference there. So they need to be, classified differently. A woman with a naturally occurring high testosterone level, I don't think necessarily needs to be kicked out of a sport. I mean, more power to her if that's what she's naturally producing. That's not the only.
Totally.
It's not the only factor, though.
It's
involved,
not that.
right?
It's that she's been told that she has to be chemically castrated to perform in the sport that she loves.
And
imagine being told that.
That's fucking trash. See, that's
she's been moved to the 1500 meters because she can't be in short distance race because she's too anabolic.
But a guy that's had been a bloke for 35 years and had all the benefits of full adolescent development with regular male testosterone levels that are far in excess of what women will ever have naturally occurring, is allowed to then transition, take estrogen for a couple of years, and it's a lot more to it than that. But essentially, that's the guts of it, and can suddenly compete against women that have been women their whole life. I don't think so.
So the issue seems to be that we do not have a good definition of what it means to be gender in sport. Yeah.
Well, which is scary in a way.
Yes, because it seems like something
we should.
I guess it's something that hasn't really come up in the past.
Yeah. Go on, Ash.
Yeah, I was just saying, it seems like something that we should have figured out. And another thing as well of like this person that went from 800 to 1500. That she, and then unless she's castrated, is that
allowed to run to 1500.
Is that not a natural gift for the sport? I'm not never going to beat Luke at strongman because he's.
I'm glad you finally come to terms with that, Ash.
Don't worry, I came to that.
What about me? You reckon you'll beat me?
I might beat Andy, but
I just want you to beat Yannick at something.
I will crush it. Yeah,
like stone extensions or something like that, or what?
Ash is already way better than Yannick at that.
So
the only issue is Ash suffers for it. Like one session
for
of
a month.
strongman Friday, and he never can move again.
Yeah, but that's almost a natural thing that I have. Is just like, oh, well, I have poor like tendon recovery. Like I'll do if I exert any amount of pressure and don't pay attention, I can ruin myself.
Yeah,
Luke is significantly bigger than me. He can hold way more muscle in his frame. That's a gift that he's got. These are natural things. How can we, like, if we're being inclusive and it's like clean sport, we're trying to get the best people, whatever, you're going to have genetic outliers. That's just the way it works. So that's just, to me, the chemical castration is absolute nonsense to me. Like, because
as to that point, you're 100% right, mate. Sorry to cut you off. It's like if you could like click your finger right and instantly clean up sport entirely, 100% clean, no drugs involved. The top athletes are still the fucking top athletes. The cream ones are the top regardless.
You're 6'2", get the fuck out of here. We're taking 75 kilo white men. That's it. What is this? Olympics in the 20s? Like,
no, it's strongman in the 2000s.
Yeah. But that's like, if you start taking the natural, you can just call it talents, whatever you want, genetic,
natural genetic variations, right?
100%. If you take them out of sport, like, what are you left with? Where do you stop?
Yeah, like, are we removing the very essence of what it is to be human, in that it is natural variations that make us all individuals?
Yeah.
Well, you can totally go to any level on this, Ash. It's 100%. I'm going to use myself and Luke, for example. You know, in strongman, I was always considered what I'd say a medium to normal size strongman, not a heavy pro, but not a small pro. I was just an average size guy, you know. And I always knew in my mind, and I was always able to bring myself to understand that there were certain attributes that guys like Luke were just going to have over me. They were bigger. They could just lift more because they were bigger guys. I'll go back to Lasha again. It takes, I even said this to the young kids last night, it takes a big man to lift big weights, okay? Yeah. It's the same like anything. Look at Wee when she was out there. She was probably the biggest girl on the platform.
That's a big girl,
Yeah, but that's her genetic attribute as well. I have no doubt she was still going to be she's like 5'10" and pretty staunch, no matter what behind the scenes
and
is going on.
Like if you look at someone like an Eddie Hall with his 500 kilo deadlift, right? I'm not a huge fan of Eddie Hall, but like it's not just what he took and what he did and the drive and things like that. It's also his genetic biomechanics, his leverages allowed him to be perfectly built for deadlifting. Like it's like, but then there were other events that he didn't excel in necessarily because those attributes
he wasn't big enough.
That made him a great deadlifter meant he wasn't great at other things. It's like there's variation there, and that's why athletes. That's why it's, again, just quickly on the side, it's difficult to be a strongman because and other sports like decathlons and Highland Games where you have to be multi-skilled across many different disciplines, but. That's a whole other discussion for another day. But yes, if you sat there and went, we only take this type or this genetic profile or this, it's like you've just removed half of what it is to be a fucking athlete and a human.
Do you reckon Kearney will ever win, like World's Strongest Man?
No.
Who's
that? Do you think that's
Rob Kearney? Rob Kearney. Stephen Kearney was a rugby league player and a great player, even though he was a shitty Kiwi.
No, the only reason I ask is because he's like a major outlier in height as well. And
Rob Kearney he's just, and this is nothing against Rob, he's just not big enough. He's just not big enough.
He's World's Strongest Man finalist material. He's a great guy from all accounts. Yeah. Everyone I've heard speak of him, and you've met him. Biggie,
lovely person.
Really lovely guy, but he just is not big enough to be World's Strongest Man.
And people, it's going in. It's strongest man going towards bigger weights, less movement. It's becoming more static over time because that's what brings in the crowds. People want to see the fucking big lifts.
It's a freak show.
Absolutely.
Everyone wants to see freaks.
It comes down to financial as well. People, I've said this from the get-go, and it's one of those terrible things you have to explain to young athletes when they come up, is that people want to see the biggest freaks in the world, and they don't want to see the drug-free guys. They just don't want to see them because they're just not what people pay money to see. And it's really, I think people need to just it's almost like people need to come to an understanding of these types of things. Same as what you were saying before, Andy. People just need to almost relearn what it is to be an athlete again, and relearn what it's like to be not first either, to be second, to be third, and just almost understand exactly why it was made in the first place. Like I said, as I was explaining the difference between myself and Luke and doing certain things there, and even the difference between myself and Colm Wolf. There's a photo of me and Colm next to each other when, like, back in 2015, and both clean as a whistle, like clean, drug-free. You know, Colm was clean as a whistle. I've always been one.
So Biggie's talking about the Amateur Arnold 2015, where they both basically turned pro. Biggie was already a pro, but he wasn't the pro in the Arnold that year. Colm won his pro card off the back of that.
And went up. It was just one of those things. You look at Colm standing next to me, and he's so much broader than I am. Just genetically, he is so much bigger than me.
That beautiful Samoan genetics, man.
Exactly. And what do? Turn around and just hate him for it? I can't hate him for it.
Ban him. Make him run 1500s.
Yeah. Make Colm run a 1500.
One of the biggest obvious versions of that to what you were saying is like, watch bodybuilding. Watch the natural guys, and then watch the Olympia. Like but then again, Kai Green competed natural in his first. He made pro natty, and then see what happened once he started on the juice. Like, that's the biggest, like the most people have made different.
Yeah. And why do you
built
think
different, son?
Why do you think it's predominantly black dudes carving up bodybuilding? They just have those beautiful genetics, those small joints, the lovely muscle bellies. They're just
fucking so wide.
White dudes just look like shit in comparison. It's just the way it is, and it's just a genetic fact. Like, we just don't have the same muscle bellies.
And you
You also don't have the same tan. You don't look as good on stage. Pasty white motherfuckers.
God damn it, Andy. As I went to the beach with Andy, and I'm like, what happens to you in the sun, Andy? He goes, I just get darker. I'm like, fuck.
Wow, this just took a racial turn.
That was a genuine question. Because Andy cracked me up one day. He goes, I got to go to the chemist. I said, what for? He goes, I got to buy some vitamin D. I'm like, there's a giant vitamin D provider in the sky. He goes, yeah, it doesn't work for me. I'm like, oh, right. I fucking
100%.
I didn't realize that was a genuine thing.
No, a lot of the Armenian, Iranian kid, and a few of the other guys that coach, same deal.
Thing. Dark
same
skin.
deal. I stood and looked at him like you would have, and just going, "You're taking the piss out of me, right?"
That's right. That's what you get. That's what you get, Andy. You're naturally sexy, so I get free vitamin D. Fuck you.
That's exactly the same thing I said to him. Like, I said the exact same thing. I said, "Yeah, well, I'm big, fat, white, so at least I get vitamin D."
Yeah, but like, so you're basically like, especially like if you're bigger, you're basically just like a solar panel, right? Just like,
Biggie's a fucking solvent. He's a classic to go to the beach with. He fucking turns as red as that My Bones shirt in about 30 seconds. So he always runs from the fucking car to the pier, and then we're only allowed to swim in the shade underneath the pier in Adelaide.
I'm pretty sure Ash is the exact same.
I can't say anything. That's why I'm so good at like red bits and stuff, because it's like, oh, son, no, thank you.
It's my beautiful Scottish heritage. Besides, obviously, I literally got nothing else besides a real bad fucking tan. When Luke came down here, literally, we're walking down. Luke's starting to go brown over his shoulders, and I'm sitting there going, "Maybe I need to go under the jetty right now, or I'm going to."
He's under the jetty like a hermit, or the fucking Billy Goat's rough fucking troll, and I'm out in the sun going, God, it's good to be Danish heritage, because I actually just
and I'm sitting there just hating every day of it, going, this is just, I felt like Zoidberg getting popped into like a big.
Yes, that's two podcasts in a row we've had a Futurama reference. This is amazing.
We'll just keep them rolling through, right? It's amazing. It's amazing how we've just fluctuated off a complete
I don't
topic.
even know. I don't even know what the original question was, but this is great.
I really like it. It's just like the circumstances of the podcast is just like, look, we're going to copy. We're going to go for the hard topics. We're going to be honest. We're going to open up a can of worms. But like, Zoidberg is pretty funny also. So like,
Zoidberg's a fantastic character, bro.
What I will say is this: I think it's good to go from having those serious topics and those serious conversations into having that relaxing, because this is the epitome of how people should be talking about these things.
Well, look at Zoidberg, man. Look at Zoidberg when his test levels skyrocketed. He's in the gym, man. He was fucking carving up. Remember when he has to go back and mate back home? The dude was fucking benching 405 like it's nothing. He was looking jacked and tanned. I mean, fuck, it's obvious what testosterone does.
Yeah, but I agree with you. There shouldn't be tension around this topic. Like, we're like, being honest and stuff. It shouldn't be it should be the norm. There should be no reservation about talking about drugs and these things openly.
Yep.
Like, there should be no backlash because people say things, which
you should never feel persecuted for having a different opinion to somebody else. Obviously, if you're on his sprigging hate, well, that's a whole different fucking thing, because 100%. You're actually out to intentionally offend people and hurt people. But if it's purely in the sort of context of a symposium where you're sharing concepts and ideas and discussing things, you should never feel persecuted for having a different opinion to somebody else.
The discovery of truth is like a high ideal, and it should not be like shrouded.
Yeah,
that's how you become more intelligent. That's how these problems start. Andy, you're talking about, and Ash, you're talking about how people don't actually have a gender specific for sport. It's because people don't talk. We're so secluded and we're so scared, walking on eggshells and everything like that.
What's
and
consequence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Luke can attest to me being one of those types of people who tends to be Switzerland. I tend to walk on a very line because I'm not trying to offend one side or another.
That's what I'm a bit Swiss too, right?
Yeah,
I think we can all agree that you are not Switzerland.
Okay.
No.
Germany.
You're probably more North Korea than anyone.
1940s Germany, or
white countries anyway.
Yeah, he's just like, I want more land. God damn it! I don't know what you like.
It's just one of those things where I feel like the more people just relax and talk about like this type of situation, and the more you can just learn from people and pick their brains and learn from every aspect, and knowledge is key to becoming better as a person, and hearing out each other's side stories and stuff like that. And you're gonna disagree with things. Everyone's gonna disagree with each other. That's a great thing to be. It's great to disagree. Because if we all agreed on the same shit all the time, it'd be a very boring ass place to live in.
Wow, absolutely, right?
I mean, part of why I really like Ash I said part of why I really like Luke and Ash is we clash like all the time.
Yeah,
I believe.
And we have some like super fiery discussions at times where I do not feel comfortable. I'm like, this is not where I want to be. But afterwards, I feel good for it.
Once we punch on, it's all good.
Germany, we can all just bash through any border that we just see. Like, it just inevitably you end up with what you want, and then it's peace. By the way, that is another Futurama reference. Where he's just like, we're not going to be Switzerland, we're going to be Germany.
What is like? Let's go around
filthy neutrals.
What was your favorite session for weightlifting this time around? Ash, you can go first.
That's sorry.
What was your favorite session for the weightlifting this time around?
I think the 109s was pretty good.
Damn it, that was my one. Why?
Yeah, that was mine too. Okay, the 109s was great, and we all hate New Zealand. The end.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed
Cheesy Young 73s.
I thought that was a underrated, just dominance in that division. I think he is very, very good. And what he goes, did he go 5 for 6, 6 for 6? And like he just crushed it.
I think I missed the 73s. I don't think I caught it this year.
No, you did, because that's when we were like, 73s is when it gets interesting.
Right, yeah.
Jacked. Just like,
Who was I abusing on the WhatsApp thing at that time? Probably just.
I think we were just solo. We didn't have our group chat up yet.
Yeah.
Geordie, anything different for you?
I actually liked. I of course, being an ex super heavyweight myself, of course, I'm always going to go for the 109s. But the result was already there and thereabouts. And again, I've been watching weightlifting since I was 14, so I've seen heaps. So I tend not to watch too much. I tend to just watch what I know and what I like. But probably the class I actually enjoyed, which I never really watched, was the 73s. Antonio, the Italian, on his 210 on his last attempt.
Yeah,
I wanted him to get that lift so bad.
Yeah,
Because Lou's great, don't get me wrong, Lou's fantastic. He's a great lifter. But I just wanted to see someone.
Are you talking about the 81? Sorry.
81s, my apologies. And
is this the Italian that was a bit fucking cockeyed?
Yeah, just rushed everything. That was another thing at the Olympics this year. Every lifter just looked like they were rushing every goddamn lifter. Weird. But he was, I just sat there going, if he gets this is just going to, this could almost outshadow or come close to Lasha's like comp, but he obviously missed it. And it wasn't much of a miss. So the 80s were great. The 109s were great. I love that young Bulgarian kid. He is just
he was good, huh?
He's a beautiful, beautiful lifter.
I think he was unfairly treated by the jury on that supposed press out. I think that was a little bit of over refereeing.
As like right after West gets his.
Right.
Yeah. Jury's been a bit over the top for the whole thing. But again,
they've been inconsistent, as you always expect from people, I guess.
Yeah.
Being consistent.
The 80s were great, and the supers were great. So, really, really cool to see it all, to be honest. And to be honest, the 87 plus supers, women, that was great too. Watching Lee just go out and just.
If you're picking individual lifters as well, you'd sit there and go, well, that individual performances, you could go a whole different list, right?
What did we total? What did she did 320?
180 clean and jerk, and what was her snatch? 140 something? Yeah, 320.
Beautiful.
Total,
yeah. Still got her covered. Just.
Well, see, that's the thing. I can no longer. I used to be like this year. I was like, oh, I'm going to try and get myself to a point where I can deadlift what the heaviest people can clean and jerk. And like, I'm still off the mark yet. I'm like, damn it.
The biggest thing is when we started as kids, especially the senior guys, the goal as a super heavyweight as a young kid was to always outlift what the biggest like heavyweight female could do, so when Tatiana came out and did 55.93, I was so glad I was retired because that was just never going to happen. And then Weezer used to come back and do 48. I'm like, yeah, still got that covered, but unbelievable.
Just barely, because she didn't get out of first gear.
Nah,
it was like Lasha, she didn't have to get out of first gear.
Just doesn't need it.
Nah.
I think my favorite session would have to be the 55 girls watching Hidlin. Yeah. That was talk about like a lift that means a lot, like finishing to get the win. Like the 109s was cool, but people had to just miss for the medals to be decided. Whereas like she came out, she was the last lift, she got it, she won. That excites me.
And China gambled and fucked up.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
They had more, and they gambled wrong. They didn't think Hidlin would pull that out, and she pulled out the clutch lift of all fucking time, and now she's a gold medalist.
Which is so cool. So
amazing. I enjoyed the under 109s. I enjoyed the supers, of course. I mean, pretty much I just enjoyed watching.
I was telling Geordie before the started that I was like, I've never been more disappointed to watch world records break.
Well, that's what even Cam said this morning. He's like, or last night or whatever it was. He goes, "We saw 3 world records, and I'm so disappointed."
It was just boring because like I just knew what was going to happen.
I was with the supers. I was disappointed in the lack of depth in the field, but I kind of knew that was happening. One guy I sort of was aware of, but now I'm actually a fan is David Leedy, the Kiwi lad. Like I just loved everything about him. The dude's a cracker. It reminds me of Islander lads that I know and have competed with and even played footy with. They're always in good spirits. They're great fun to be with, and he looked like he was having a ball. So fucking good on him, and hit some fucking big lifts. Like, that was some great numbers he was hitting. You know what I mean? So
I think
he's got a great future.
his second clean and jerk was a 5 kilo PB.
Yeah, it was. And then they went big for his third attempt and he just got spat out and he didn't.
He's tried 240 a few times and missed it. He's tried it a few times.
But you know it's going to be there in future, so that's cool. Yeah. He's got a lot more to go. He's only a boy. So I one that's sort of gone under the radar, is it the 89s?
So there is no 89s in the Olympics.
What
so there's 10.
90.
Is it 96 and then it goes up to 109?
No. What's the men's in the 80s?
81.
81. Yeah, so 81s. Where the Qatari guy.
No, that's 96.
That was the 96. All right, cool. So I'm fucking dead at what I'm watching. I was watching too much CrossFit Games. So when Tia came out in the 96s and smashed that 231 clean and jerk. No, awesome. But I really enjoyed that Qatari dude's lifting, actually. He was a bit almost Lasha because he wasn't coming out until everyone else was fucking packed up and going home. He genuinely enjoyed winning. I think the 225, I think it was, he took on the clean and jerk. I mean, he won with an opener, but I think his 225 was a great lift. And then I actually enjoyed watching that class. Actually, I had a lot of fun with it. So
that's one thing that was exciting to watch was that these lifters that did have, stand out, like they were winning no matter what.
Yeah,
they were coming out for the seconds and thirds. Like I did not see a lifter retire,
when they didn't have to, right?
Yeah, which is very much in the spirit of spectatorship, right? Like. Yeah. We want to see big lifts.
People a show.
I don't care if you won. Yeah.
Great showmanship by the Qatari kid. He was
cool. Hey, Biggie, you like that guy? Like I really like him.
He does rub people the wrong way. I know a few people that don't like him because of that brash attitude and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you know what? That's a showman, my friend.
Yeah, he's very engaging to watch on television. He's a stunning lifter to say the least. And
hang on, we talk about
cool hair.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's like Arab Andy was up there kicking ass, and he
Egyptian Andy.
Oh, Egyptian Andy. But we talk about Hidland Diaz. Oh yeah, first medal for Philippines. Well, he just took the first medal for Qatar as well.
First gold
for Qatar in weightlifting. So that's a big milestone for them. They're only a minute country as well.
Yeah, but Qatar killed it in track and field. I don't know if you saw that. Like,
I realized that, but we don't give a fuck about track and field except shot putting, and we've already established this.
I think it's pretty obvious who's paying their athletes as well. Watching the Qataris.
There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in the Middle East. Let's be honest.
Oh, I can remember back in Sydney Olympics, leading to Sydney, they went out and bought like half the Bulgarian team. Jabba, Salim, who was a super, and then their under 105 were both like world championships from Bulgaria, and Qatar paid $1 million each to come and move to Qatar, and they both moved there. Jabba got third at Sydney and then won world championships the next year, and I think I can't remember the under 105s. I think he got silver in Sydney and then won worlds the next year as well for $1 million each.
That oil money comes in hot.
Oh, dude, big time.
Somebody give me some fucking oil money. I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, you get pissed on.
You need a commentator. You need a commentator taken out. I'm your man.
Oh, dude, take out Michelle Breeze, man.
Michaela.
Who's Michelle?
Sorry,
long lost sister.
Mate, all I know is they have Colin Bryce. Colin Bryce in the UK, and then
we got Michaela Breeze. Yeah, like. Take out the male one too. He's like, obviously well read on his subject matter. Oh, so Lasha's best is 285 in Rio. I'm like, cool, bro. That's good. We all know he probably can do 285, but shut up.
I like his people. Yeah, you go. Sorry.
Two people we need to bring back: Daryl Eastlake because he goes fucking bananas, and Dean Lucan Senior.
Yes.
They're the two you bring back.
Yeah, but is Dean Lucan Senior going to even say anything? You won't know he's there. And Daryl Eastlake's he's dead. So we'll just sit at Earn there. It'll just be completely silent.
I mean, having commentators was better than having no commentators because the B sessions were really hard to watch without anything. That being said, I wasn't the biggest fan of Michaela Breeze, mainly because she seemed very much like too authoritative.
She talks down to everyone. And that's how it feels like.
Yeah, she's got a real arrogance.
She seemed biased as well.
Yeah, biased and pretentious. She's like, oh,
Yeah.
And the British accent doesn't do her any favors either.
No.
I mainly got mad at her muscle shaming poor Wes.
yeah.
Like, the guy's jacked.
Yeah.
Let him be jacked.
Dude looks fucking tacular. Half the other guys look like trash. Yes, they lift better, but they look like shit, and that's what matters.
Typical weightlifters, like they've got like spaghetti for arms.
Yeah, the
And then they've just got the
Bulgarian
legs
kid in the 109s or whatever, right?
Just
But dude,
nothing upper body, but
he looked like
yeah.
fucking. It reminded me of Chris Ray, just his huge ass and legs and no upper body.
Yeah, spaghetti for arms, mate.
Right?
That's just
and then like a
two.
220 clean and jerk. So I'll shut my fucking mouth. But whatever.
If you're gonna take anything out of the Olympics, that's just it. Just weightlifters are so small in the upper body and massive in the fucking legs.
Yeah,
you know.
And the females are actually lifting my best log lift clean and jerk, or clean and press. So I'm actually gonna probably hurt myself now.
182, mate. That's all you need.
Oh, is that all? No worries. Done.
I swear I'm not asking for much from you. Just get that 180, or just put a 0.5 on either side. 180.
I'm telling you, I'm going to fucking CrossFit. They got heaps of money and they look fucking spectacular and they present it well.
One was it 310 grand for first place? In CrossFit?
That's just his prize pool. On top of that, you got to remember they win 10 grand per fucking event win as well. I'm pretty sure.
Wow, and we wonder what
he probably walked out with like 400 fucking G's, and he's 21 or something. I mean, and he's on that good Matt Fraser cycle, obviously, not a silly boy, that lad.
Actually, there's a 15. Did you see the 15-year-old girl that won an event at the games as well? She beat Tia in one of the workouts. That was
the 17. Yeah, that was Mallory O'Brien. Her and Emma Carey were the two 17-year-olds. They're freaks. They were both top 10 against all those girls. Yeah, let's talk about CrossFit. Awesome.
She was unreal.
Never seen Luke so excited to talk about CrossFit.
CrossFit's won me over. They're phenomenal. Their fucking athletes are great, and they're over here presenting well. It looks great.
Yeah.
It was easier to access their broadcast than it was the fucking Olympics. Well done, Channel 7, you wankers.
Jesus, you're a fucking angry man.
Fuck them. Kill them all.
It's one of those funny things. Me and Luke can sit back because obviously we've done elite level and multi-sports and stuff like that. So we can sit back and look at it from the point of view of $310,000 for a 20-year-old kid. These 17-year-old girls. The girl who won, she had the face of a 15-year-old kid, but she was just jacked as. She looked unbelievable. She was just such a.
Wait till she grows up. That's going to be scary.
Oh, mate, she'll go. Unfortunately, it'll go one of two ways. She'll go really well, or touch wood. Hopefully the injuries don't. Don't come, and she can just keep herself in that nice, consistent build. But
we see that with like Lauren Fisher and stuff, right?
Yeah,
where they kind of like didn't do anything.
They've just done it right. They've gone well past world's strongest man. They've gone well past weightlifting. They've just done such a good job at marketing. And, like Luke said, their athletes look fantastic and they just do some crazy things.
Absolutely.
Well, the things we can learn from that, things we can learn from that as a sport, though, is that they spend the time on grassroots.
They have systems. They have gyms that teach their methods and they have a filtering process to the top. Like it's
exactly.
And it's very obvious. Like if you were to be actually good, it's clear how to get there, and it's clear.
Okay, so this is an interesting argument, and you are right to a point. And it's a funny one because I had this discussion with Cam Taylor yesterday. Can't keep him out of my DMs; he's only human. But he came at me when I put up that post about the disparity in prize money between the top of CrossFit and the top of Strongman. And Biggie and I have a greater insight into what the realities of that are more than most. And a lot of people are very naive. And I could tell that by a lot of the responses I got in my DMs. I'm just like, yep, you got no idea what you're talking about. That's cool. Shuffle along. But Cam came at me and said, he goes, yes, but Strongman has grown a lot since they started giving more space to the weight classes, and that increased the grassroots development and all the rest of that. And yes, that's true to an extent. The problem is that's been happening now for about 10 years, let's say, in its current form. Nothing's changed at the top. None of it's filtering up. None of the promoters are pushing that money up. None of the athletes are benefiting. There are less top-level shows now, I would argue, than there used to be, because you sit there and go, oh, yeah, there's Giants Live, this and that. Yeah, but Strongman Champions League is a shadow of its former self, even though it still runs. It doesn't have the prize money and the prestige it once had. And Giants Live was literally just a replacement series with less legs than the World's Strongest Man Super Series. So you cannot argue that it's now actually in a stronger place. To me, it's still in a weaker place. Yes, you have the Arnold World Series, which didn't exist, and that's become a thing. But at the moment, that's me and Biggie know the ins and outs of that a lot more than most will care to understand. That's on its fucking death throes. So that may not exist in the next year or two. So the prize money at World's Strongest Man still only sits at around 50, 60 grand, maybe. 15 years ago, it was at 45 to 50 grand. You're talking 15 years of inflation and growth, and the sport hasn't seen a single fucking brass razoo come up. You got individual event wins at the CrossFit Games at $10,000, and the top prize pool is 310 for first place with, Arnold World Series, you nearly kill yourself to do one leg of that. I know, because I've done 3 of them, and it's fucking hectic and it's heavy, and the lineups are actually probably arguably better than World's Strongest Man and heavier, and the winner takes $10,000 for winning that. But you got to pay your own way there. You got to pay your own hotels and all the other bullshit associated with it. Strongman's a fucking disaster area, and it's hungry promoters at the top that are keeping it down.
And that's, to be honest, that's across a lot of different spectrums. And I'm going to go back to say of CrossFit, another reason why they've had such a dominant sort of build into things is they have young guys at the top with young ideas, with good focus on building it from young people's ideas. Andy, if you had turned around and I'm going to use you for example, if you said to me, I'm going to go for presidency of the Australian Weightlifting Federation, I'd be stoked with that for the plain and simple reason why you're young, you've got a great mindset, and you want to do something different. I've worked with committees my whole life with guys who are stuck in their 100-year-old way of doing things. Strongman is stuck in their 100-year way of doing things. They're trying to do different things, but due to the cheeky fucking things that they do in Strongman is that they run these lightweight classes like this. What are the Giants Live World's Strongest Man?
OSG, Strongman Games,
Let's be honest with ourselves. That's a funnel for money to go up to the top guys. They put 15 athletes in a row and make them run a yoke, and then they put another 15 athletes through and run a yoke.
Because they've all got to pay for it. There's no prize money on those. It's we'll give you an invite to this and we'll give you a trophy for that, but you got to pay for yourself to go to the US. But the problem is that prize money isn't turning up in the pockets of the pro athletes. It's who knows where the fuck it is. It's lining Colin Bryce's pockets. Fuck, I've just ruined my career now.
These guys are the
APL has like 10,000 people compete in not 1,000, but it's like a couple of thousand people compete at nationals, and it's just like
you get $1,000 for winning.
Yeah, you get like, hey, thumbs up for winning. Yeah, and you can't do any filming, and also you can't have any sponsorship, and also this is the only elite event. So
if you try to market yourself, you make no money out of that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really, when are the guys at the top going to actually get rid of all these old timers that just need to fuck off, and then put some young, vibrant people in there who want to do things, want to make the sport better for everyone, and to actually make this something different. When was the last time you saw Nike or Reebok want to give World's Strongest Man the sponsorship? World's Strongest Man sponsors are SBD. Don't get me wrong, or whoever the fuck.
SBD and Rogue. So Rogue, that's a bit of a coup, but that's because Rogue can sell fucking their equipment to strongmen and CrossFitters.
But
exactly. Yeah, but they're not Reebok. They're not Nike. They're not.
No, they're not.
Sorry, Andy.
I just have something to say. I think a big thing to take into account is, like, obviously everyone brings viewership up, but you want to also see these like revenue streams from these businesses. So like you can't give money to athletes and I'm talking from weightlifting standpoint, not from strongman, when you're not making money to give to athletes. So when you have the AWF, for example, their revenue streams are super simple. It's like government funding, like very limited sponsorship, because it's not an eyes on like a very good spectator sport right now. And then the last thing is
fucking could be,
but it could be. I 100% agree, and I have awesome ideas on how, like we've talked about it before.
Andy for PM.
Andy for PM and fireworks.
The last one, I'm all for fireworks. I am closet pyromaniac. And then the other one is like, so the AWF used to make their money from coaching courses. That's their only other revenue stream. Wow. Think about that as like a business. Like I look at that and I'm like, oh, you guys are in a bad way. We're not selling. We're not USA weightlifting where we're selling merch that people are proud of. we're not selling. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, jumping. I'm just going to double down on what you're saying, but pretty much like, let's make a comparison. Like they're doing the course and they're not that good and no one really cares. But also, what is the coverage for weightlifting? You have this commentator that's trash. You have no actual coverage. There's no Australian coverage of these weightlifting events.
No.
But then you've got CrossFit. Every year, Fittest on Earth comes out.
Yep.
Series of like behind the scenes coming into the games.
Yep. Brilliant.
Narrative about what they are. The people that used to make them were just people that were fans, and then they got them on board. Like you have people that are just
progressive thinking, brother.
Media company.
Yeah.
Like, it's its own process.
Yep.
So, like,
And you can't give CrossFit, like, they've done it well, and part of it has been just like not luck, but like they've just done things accidentally well as well, because they had a media team that literally just cared about the athletes in the sport, so they pushed the athletes and the sport rather than just pushing the sport.
Wow, imagine that, right? Actually giving the people involved.
Telling stories. That's what sport is, right?
But you know what, Andy, as well, they took a chance on things. Some ideas would have fucking fallen
flat. That is
other
100%
things
true.
weren't.
They were risk takers.
They broke that 100-year-old way of people thinking. Like I said, young guys with good ideas, wanting to do stuff, wanting to help people, wanting to make athletes better. Andy, when I came back from weightlifting, from strongman for so many years, I hadn't been in weightlifting in South Australia. It used to be a really good state, and it's really quite poor. My goal was to try and bring that flavor of strongman into weightlifting. For so many years, I just remember seeing videos of myself end up on the AWF weightlifting page for the plain reason, halfway through a lift, I would fucking, yell and scream and make noise, and I would just have fucking fun. And, to me, it was just about putting on a bit of a show. I was competing against Damo. Damo was starting what I was finishing on. But every video was just being used because it was something different. So whoever was running AWF at the time was trying to use that footage to try and, build a bit of positivity to things. And they're just, as I said, they're just stuck in these places are stuck in their old way of doing things.
Where did David Leedy finish yesterday?
5th.
So, and like, we haven't shut up about him. Like,
good result.
Look at that personality, right?
We need those personalities, and we need to just, and unfortunately,
also David Leedy loves to wear Sensei & Co.
Yeah, there you go.
I have seen him in Sensei & Co. I think it's presumptuous to say that he loves Sensei & Co.
Sure, that's not very good marketing, Andy.
We could
lockdown sale on now.
We literally could just learn so much, and I feel like it's just going to be one of those real, learning curves that's going to take a long time. And Andy, I'd love to see. Again, for me, I feel like I'm at a point where I probably wouldn't be the best person to help build weightlifting in a sense because of being jaded from a whole lot of things in my past. But for you and the young guys like yourself who own gyms, who are passionate, who want to work, but you also work with different athletes from different sports. You work with Luke from Strongman. You work with all these different guys. You have so much of a flavor from different things coming together. You can take a bit of Strongman, a bit of powerlifting, a bit of this, a bit of that, and take it into weightlifting.
Chuck them all in the bin.
That's it. And then it'll just make weightlifting so much better. Everyone watches the Olympics. Our last Olympics, Tia was at our Olympics. She's not a weightlifter. Tia is not a weightlifter. She's a CrossFitter.
Yeah, she went to get the feather in her cap.
Right.
And then she went back to the sport that pays her.
Right. And now she's a multimillionaire.
And I just wish people at the top of, and to be honest, every conversation we've just had today, which has been 4 hours of a podcast, which I'm sure Andy's had, it almost everything just swings around to the top tier positions, just, understanding and just changing with the times and moving with the times. And I really hope, especially for the homegrown stuff, guys, listen to the next generation of guys like yourself, Andy, and the other, not just you, the other coaches around the country who are young guys with different ideas and different flavors to bring together, especially from different sports. You've got such a good team around you, and I feel like we're just missing that trick a little bit.
We're stagnating. We're in a holding pattern.
I think that the secret for a lot of these sports is, one, just increasing viewership dramatically by creating media that is interesting for people to watch. And for me, that is telling better stories.
Mhm.
So you don't even have to have the best athletes. Like Luke, me, and Yannick and Angela made a really cool little video just following my pursuit of like winning New South Wales Strongest Man. Like it's I'm very proud that I won, but it's not that big a deal. But we made a cool video about it. And like you can make these amazing videos for quite a low budget compared to what some of these companies are paying for things.
It's something the UFC have always done well as well, Andy, is when you got their DVD packages and watch their whole shows, you don't just watch the fight nights. They always had like a proper lead in 1 hour of following the life of the two fighters involved in each fight. And I used to find it fascinating stuff.
Exactly. You tell stories and then you incentivize and if you don't have the money to pay the athletes, you don't take away opportunities for sponsorship. You give them opportunities for sponsorship. You don't be like, hey, you can't have this on your suit. You say, hey, you have someone that's willing to pay you to do the sport.
We'll give you the exposure.
How about we let you put it right in the front of your suit so that they're more willing to give you the money to keep doing the sport to get better, in which case we can profit off it and then we can eventually pay you a little bit more. You can't have it both ways. You can't treat these guys as athletes that you don't pay and then at the same time be like, also you can't have sponsorship.
You can't make money, but we're not going to give you any money.
That's
exactly.
That's outrageous, really, isn't it? All you do is have to put it the way you just put it, and it sounds so silly. But I don't think anybody ever steps. Right? I don't think anybody ever steps back and re sort of assesses and looks at it properly. Like just go, you know what? This is fucking ridiculous. Yeah. Also, raw hoodies now available on the website. They're amazing. Check it out.
We want athletes to make money because it's the only way they keep being athletes. Yeah. And money is made, and we want these businesses. We even want the promoters to make money. Like we want everyone to make money. It's a rising tide raises all shit.
It's a circle. One helps another, which comes around and helps another, and it just keeps doing that. Yeah. And again, like I was just saying, Eddie, these are the ideas that people, like Luke said, it's not fucking rocket science. You just don't sit back and really think about it. And I'd just love to slap some of these old people in the face with a bit of reality. It'd be great. It really is.
There's a reason that Telstra is like our only AWF sponsor compared to like having Weet-Bix, having like a major
Nike or something, right?
Channel or whatever. Yeah, Nike. Like we don't even need Nike. Start with someone a bit smaller.
Well, if you don't want Nike, I'll have them. Fuck it.
No, as like if they're not willing to do it, like approach some of these companies and build up and give them the reason to actually.
And you know what? Some of these smaller companies would want to get on board, Andy, because the mutual exposure that they gather through backing an athlete and the exposure the athlete gets from being backed by that company is like you said, that rising tide analogy.
What about the small businesses sponsor like rugby league teams, like an under sevens team gets $1,000 to put their name on the jersey.
Yep, that's Raw Barbell, and then they forget to put the name on the jersey.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so like we do it. Like Raw sponsors like small, under sevens like athletes and stuff. Like and I'm only doing that because like that's just out of good faith. But if they were like, hey, you're actually going to get this out of it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. I'll do that. Right. Raw will sponsor that AWF.
There's a lot of sponsorship businesses, correct me if I'm wrong, is a big sort of tax write-off too, right?
It is. It is a tax. It's a very big tax write-off for business. Because it's
got to pay tax to to avoid it.
Yeah, right.
No, I didn't say that.
Cool. So we can't air this anymore. I've just trashed my strongman career. Andy's under investigation by fucking ASIO now or something, but fucking.
I meant it because you have to make money to pay tax.
Of course you did, Andy.
Yes, we all pay our taxes. Good stuff. Damn, it just got hot in here. Fuck.
Very good.
I think that's probably a good place to leave off.
Yeah, admit all our criminal dealings and then quit. Fuck.
Yeah, sweet.
Geordie, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Instagram, Jordan_Biggie or the King of the Circus. Facebook, same thing. King of the Circus on there, Jordan Steffens. On my website, www.kingofthecircus.com.au. Or at my local checkmates with Luke.
Checkies! I'm overdue.
Biggie,
Yes, you
I
are.
forgot to ask you.
Yes.
Did you see me riding a unicycle?
Yes, I did. I was thoroughly impressed, actually. I sat there going, I wonder how we could actually make that into like something we could do. Do you like ride at me as quickly as possible with the unicycle and jump off when I catch you?
And then
Or-
you just
I would love to do
headbutt him
that.
into the ground.
Oh, actually, did anyone see Lasha tummy his coach?
Holy
Yeah.
fuck. Is the coach dead?
Yeah. Poor George, man.
Yeah, he's just a fucking mush up against the wall.
He bounced.
I was thoroughly impressed, actually. That was riding a unicycle. I see the guys do that at the circus school, and I just, not a huge thing for me to do.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
flat
not
tire.
my thing either.
No.
I just
I
just want to be part of your circus adventures, Biggie. That's all.
When you guys come down late, you'll definitely be a part of it
Ooh,
sooner
it's
rather
gonna
than
be good.
later. Absolutely sooner rather than later.
Fuck yeah. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I
Yes,
am
sir.
too. Guys, you can find Raw Barbell Club at Raw Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Make sure you check out our YouTube. We're releasing awesome new content, just like this podcast, every day. We have our hoodies up on sale on the Raw Barbell store. You can follow Luke at Luke_Blue Mountain_Reynolds. And you can follow Ash at Ash_Jones_NSS. And you can follow me at Train with Andy. You've been a great audience, I assume. I don't know. We don't really have much to do with you, but
Not a live audience, so it's
yeah. I assume you've been
How's
great.
that studio audience been?
Thanks so much for being here, guys. And I'll see you next time.
Peace out.